Good evening. Welcome to welcome to the February meeting of the City Council. Mayor Hooks is recovering from some surgery he had, so I'll be officiating the meeting tonight. But welcome. It's good to see such a good crowd. We're blessed tonight to have Pastor John Mark Hamilton from the Grace Life Church. John, we appreciate you coming.
Grateful to be here. And Mr. Bradley, City Council, thank you for the opportunity just to open tonight in prayer. I know we got a full agenda, so we'll get to it. Father, thank you so much just that we can invite you into this meeting tonight, invite you in to our decisions, to what we do. We know in Scripture it tells us to pray for those who are in authority, that we may live peaceable and quiet lives. And so, God, right now, we just ask for a quick recovery for Mayor Hooks. God, but we also ask just for wisdom tonight and all the decisions that are going to come, that we would live peaceable and quiet lives here in Mebane. We pray for your hand of protection and favor over our city, over our law enforcement, over our EMS workers. God, we're so grateful for the opportunity and privilege it is just to live this life we have. And so, God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for everything that's going to take place. We dedicate it to you so that the city can continue to grow and prosper. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. We have two signed up for public comments tonight. Gary Lenz. If this is regarding, you know, if this is regarding Mill Creek, you don't need to speak now, but. Okay.
That's all I have to say about that. So my name is Gary Lenz. I live at 1514 Saddle Club Road. And if I can steal a line from REM, I'd rather be anywhere doing anything, but here I am. So I want to read an email exchange from 2019, September. It's between myself and Michael Burton in the land records in Orange County. And it starts out, "Good morning, Michael." I was pretty informal back when I thought he was my friend. Call him Mr. Burton now. "Good morning, Michael. Thank you for quickly addressing the erroneous transfer of our property to Franklin Legacy. We had endured a very stressful weekend. I have been reflecting on this issue, and I still do have concerns. Franklin Legacy is getting ready to go to Mebane Planning Board with a project bordering my property, and they have good reason to hope I don't show up. By our property being reassigned to them, I did not get the proper notices for meetings. Furthermore, I could understand a simple clerical error that happened, but it makes no sense that anyone was recording that easement right of way now. It was already recorded in February 2018. And the document clearly showed easement on the top of that document. To better understand what happened, we need to know who entered that information, at the direction of whom, and why it was being recorded now, with the paperwork being a year and a half old and the sewer lines already being installed. Thank you for your assistance." And Michael Burton's response, "Mr. Lenz, we are a document-driven system that relies on some manual input, and at times clerical errors are made. We appreciate your pointing out the error and allowing us time to remedy the record. We are bound to record documents as they are presented to the Register of Deeds. I cannot state why. The presentation of this to be recorded was July 19th, 2019. We will need to ask the attorney who recorded as to why the delay. I have admitted to you that our office made the error of transfer of tax ownership and have since corrected the records. Please incline anyone asking about this error to inquire with me directly, Michael Burton. So the issue was on a late Friday afternoon, we get a call from Bank of America. You've been turned over for loan fraud because you don't own the property. And if anybody doesn't know who Franklin Legacy is, it's Summit Engineering. It's my very bestest friend, James Parker. We clearly weren't happy with what happened. Why didn't he want me at the meeting? Well, I think it was well known we wanted a 50-foot barrier, not 20, and we preferred a berm and a shrubbery, to give us a little bit of privacy between our farm and this property. And we actually, myself personally, not my wife, are for higher density because this continual lower density property just allows us to just keep sprawling out into the country. I'd prefer townhomes in a 50-foot barrier as opposed to 20 feet in single family. Plenty of people seem to want townhomes. So a little history between myself and Mr. Parker. My friends at Earthcentric, not being sarcastic, I do like those people. My friends at Earthcentric approached us for a right-of-way across our property because the sewer had to go outside of the right-of-way to get up Lebanon Road. But the developers also wanted cash. And you can all repeat after me, Mebane doesn't have a infrastructure compensation. If somebody runs the sewer up the road, that's on them. They need to think about that when they pay for property. So we refused the cash. We had no reason, or Mr. Feldman, to give them cash at that point. We weren't planning on any developments. Apparently that offended them. Next thing we know, we've got auto flagman. And if you don't know what it is, you should enjoy it for 6 straight months. And Mr. Parker refused to abide by the terms of use. And we continuously called DOT. They'd come out and tell them to knock it off. A couple of days later, they'd be right back violating the terms of use. Then, of course, they took our property. Then Mr. Feldman decided he wanted to sell his property. Meritage Homes made an offer, very similar to Summit. We picked Meritage Home, I think for obvious reasons by now. And he convinced Meritage Homes it was worth $500,000 less than what they were paying for it. $500,000 less than he was willing to pay for it. Nothing, it's an unethical thing. That's really between Meritage Homes and I guess Mr. Feldman perhaps. And of course, he blocked another developer from their project, blocking access to sewer. So you can imagine why I maybe was getting a little animated when I found out that at the last minute, Mitch Murphy needed permission from Parker to hook up to the sewer. And so if you want to know why I want to monitor the TRC meetings, and 80% of the towns in the state are perfectly happy with it, it hasn't caused them a problem, it's because I wanted to know what happened, what transpired to decide it needed to be sewered not from Lebanon Road, but through Mr. Parker's property, which, oh, by the way, you'll need his permission. I don't want permission. Mr. Feldman doesn't want permission. Mitch Murphy doesn't want permission. Glenwood Homes doesn't want to have to get permission from James Parker. And there are more things we could discuss about why I get so animated, Ashley, when I talk about things.
We usually limit these to 3 minutes, Gary.
Yeah, I know, I'm on a roll, and I'll cut it off here. I'll see you next month. But I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Lyons?
I just have a question about once you destroyed our quality of life, now when I go in my yard, I have to wear noise canceling headphones. So now when I'm working in my yard recently, drones are flying directly over me on my property, 10 feet coming from their construction site. I want an end to this, or I will shoot it down. And what do? I have no privacy. You took away everything from us, and now no privacy. And they stole our property. He didn't tell you how mad I am about this. For a whole weekend, we had to decide who could have stolen our property online, being turned in for fraud, because Parker decided he needs to keep us out of this so that we don't object to that stupid subdivision you put upon us. And it borders us more than anybody else. And he knew that, and they stole our property. It wasn't a clerical error. Come on now. He's from Hillsborough. The guy in Hillsborough is the one responsible for entering. I just can't even tell you how angry this town makes me. So I want the drone issue addressed, or I'm going to shoot him down.
I think that concludes the public comment. Passes. All right. So we have our consent agenda, which includes approval of the January 6, 2025 regular meeting minutes, the December 2nd, 2024 regular meeting, our closed session meetings, September 9th, October 4th, October 16th, November 8th, November 16th, and December 2nd of 2024. We have a 24-25 disposed asset listing report, 24-25 second quarter cumulative financial report, a DMDC quarterly report, which was very well done, second quarter ending December 2024, final plat approval, or reapproval actually, for Buckhorn Business Center Phase 3, approval to sell a 2002 Pierce Contender fire engine on Gov Deals, and approval of policy prohibiting viewing or saving of pornography on city devices. Are there any questions or issues you'd like to separate out? If not, I'll entertain a motion to.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried, so consent agenda is approved. All right. We're getting ready to start a public hearing, so come on up, Ashley.
Hi, good evening. Ashley Oimby, Development Director for the city. Before you is a request by Lennar Carolinas LLC to rezone approximately 229 acres of land that is currently zoned R12 and R20. The proposed zoning is 3 different districts: R8 CD, R10 CD, and R12 CD, with CD indicating conditional district. The surrounding zoning is largely residential. There is R12 zoning to the north, east, and south, with the zoning to the east and south being a conditional district zoning as well. And then R20 to the south along Laramie and North 9th. There is some denser zoning along North 1st Street with properties zoned R8. The site is largely within the Mebane city limits. There is a small portion that has not been annexed and would require annexation before connecting to any city utilities. This portion is in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. The site is in both Alamance County and Orange County, and city utilities are available to serve the development. As it currently exists, it is a largely vacant and forested site. More than 30 years ago, the City Council did approve the Mill Creek development, which originally indicated that all of the land you see today would have had homes on it. The surrounding uses include the Mill Creek subdivision to the north and the associated golf course, the Tupelo Junction subdivision to the east, the Stagecoach Corner subdivision to the south, single family subdivision along Laramie, and North 9th to the south, and then also Potter's Mill and some other denser developments that have recently been approved along North First Street. The site is primarily located within the secondary growth strategy area. There is conservation area identified on the site, largely due to the presence of the creek. As a conditional zoning district, a site-specific plan carries with the request. This is for a residential cluster subdivision, which allows for the reduction of lot area with the preservation of additional open space. The proposal includes 565 lots, and as I mentioned, 3 different zoning districts. The majority of the lots are zoned R8 CD, which is shown in the orange color. This includes just over 100 acres. And then there is some R10 zoning in the middle pod there in the light green. That's just over 100 lots. And the R12 zoning is primarily connecting to the existing Mill Creek subdivision, which is the same zoning district that they currently have, and also R12 zoning along the larger lots that front Laramie. With the proposal, there's a multi-use path network that staff has worked with this developer and other developers in the area to ensure it's consistent with our bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. And the ultimate goal of this network is that someone from Lake Michael Park would be able to use a multi-use path to get to Kate's Farm Park if they desired. There's also a preliminary design of amenities shown on the site-specific plan, which includes a clubhouse, athletic courts, and other recreation space. The private open space we have distinguished here, as the developer does on their site-specific plan, between open space and conservation open space. As I mentioned, the creek does create areas where conservation is environmentally valued and also development is infeasible. So you see over 60 acres of conservation open space and then just under 24 acres of private open space. The public recreation space total that you see on the slide is considering the multi-use path network. There are some dimensional standards associated with this conditional request that differ from what we would typically require in the zoning districts. And that primarily is coming into play with the R8 and R10 zoning. So we have a request for reduced lot widths for those 2 zoning districts, a 46-foot lot width for R8 and a 57-foot lot width for R10. Associated with the lot width reduction, we're seeing a request to reduce the side setback and the street side setback. And then for the R12 zoning district, again, this is connecting to the existing Mill Creek primarily, and then also along Laramie, request for an increase in the maximum building height. We typically would require 35 feet, and the developer is requesting 40 feet as the maximum building height.
Zombie, what is the lot width for R8 and R10 in the UDO?
It's 50 feet for R8 and 60 feet for R10. Additionally, Article 7 of the UDO includes subdivision standards. There are some different block lengths within the subdivision from what we would typically require. So we have a few that are less than 400 feet, which would be our minimum, and then a few that are more than 1,200 feet, and that is caused by the site constraints. And then there is a request for a reduction in the width of drainage easements to a minimum of 10 feet. Our standard is 15. The developer is still responsible for meeting the intent of our storm sewer design manual and would have to appropriately show how they're addressing stormwater with their construction drawing review. With the public recreation, as I mentioned, they are contributing significantly to a multi-use path network that is envisioned in the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. They have provided an estimate that shows this construction will exceed $2.5 million. If they were to do a payment in lieu, it would just be approximately $116,000, I believe. So there's definitely a difference there. And so the request is that the consideration be given for the multi-use path network as counting towards the full requirement for public recreation area.
Are you going to have a more detailed picture showing the multi-use path, or will the developer have that?
I do not. Yes. A traffic impact analysis was required and conducted for this proposal. Um, There are modified pavement markings that are required where St. Andrews Drive extension connects to North First Street. That would essentially be changing how the paint appears on the pavement. There is enough width already of the pavement, and it would be to create 2 separate turn lanes. Additionally, this developer will coordinate with the adjoining developer, which is the um, light site plan you see on the screen here, and is likely coming to planning board next Monday. So they would coordinate to construct that roundabout that is circled in red on North First Street. Additionally, staff has worked with the developer and with DOT to come to the conclusion that no more than 100 dwelling units in the southern portion of the development, which is that area that does not connect to Mill Creek, may be platted until either the northern connection shown in red on the image is completed along with the roundabout, or the blue connection that you see there is completed and that northern connection and roundabout are bonded. And that would be by Lennar and or the adjacent developer. The other offsite transportation improvements that will be occurring are on East Stagecoach Road. These improvements are required no later than issuance of the certificate of occupancy of the 50th dwelling unit in the southern portion that's not connected directly to Mill Creek. And it would include turn lanes at the intersection with North 9th Street and Stagecoach, and also a traffic signal at the intersection of Stagecoach and North 5th Street. Are there any questions for me?
I have an engineering question. With the extended lot lengths, this may be a question for Fran, with extended lot lengths, will they still require the standard hydrant spacing?
So we by our hydrant spacing, the typical is 300 feet in residential and at intersections. I don't think we've changed that with an extended lot, to my knowledge. But at the same time, the fire department's had a chance to review the plans. And again, we'll look at the plans as the plans evolve if this project is approved at the construction phase with the actual location of these fire hydrants.
How does it work with a required traffic improvement related to a roundabout that's in conjunction with a project that hasn't come before council yet? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to that project. So what is the obligation on this project in light of that unknown aspect?
Might be better for the applicant to fully answer that question, but it's my understanding they have been in conversation about an agreement with a 50-50 share, and there may be some contingency there. Okay.
Man,
Good evening. It's nice to see you all again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here before you and present this request to you tonight. My name is Amanda Hodiern. My offices are at 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant and would-be developer that's presenting these plans. That's Lennar Carolinas LLC, or Lennar Homes, as you may have heard of them, but also as a technical matter, of course, on behalf of the property owner, which is Mill Creek Development Company, LLC. I want to thank staff and our neighbors. We've been through a long process to get here, which I hope you'll agree is presenting a plan that we feel is a product of that process and is better now than when we started all those months ago. So thank you to the staff for all that feedback, and to the neighbors who've attended many meetings, and probably most folks already a hearing as well. So we've enjoyed that process. Before I get into the nuts and bolts, I want to quickly give Stephen Dorn an opportunity to address the council. He is the Director of Acquisitions for Lennar in this area, and just wanted to give a quick introduction to this council.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stephen Dorn, as Amanda said. Our office address is 1100 Perimeter Park Drive in Morrisville, North Carolina. I'll be brief. But I did want to echo kind of what Amanda was saying. I want to thank staff, the planning board members, members of council, Mr. Mayor, and especially the neighbors. We've had a lot of feedback, a lot of good feedback. We kicked this off in October. I was going back in dates, October 2023. Certainly the project has evolved tremendously since then. And we're very excited about the project tonight to present what we think is a great community. We've got the Lennar, we've got the design team here to answer any questions you may have. But with that, I'm going to turn it right back over to Ms. Hodiern and get into the details. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. So as we go forward, you'll hear a lot from me. You're going to hear from our traffic engineer, Miss Caroline Cheeves with the DRMP. We also have with us Eric Blocker with Lennar. He's the project manager for this, who's been in the weeds since day one. And we have Alden West, who is our civil and design consultant with McAdams Company. So you may hear from some of those folks directly, but everyone is here at your disposal as needed. And it's entirely up to you how you want to do this. But if you want us to kind of get through the whole presentation and then have Q&A at the end, everyone will be here for that. So the nature of the request, as you've heard from Ms. OMB, it is a total acreage of 229.31 acres. That's comprised of four different parcels, sort of divided up and meandering amongst what you know as the existing Mill Creek golf course. And that's a result of a community that started a long time ago, got developed part of the way, the whole golf course got developed, and then the rest of it has laid in wait to finish completion, which we're excited to hopefully embark upon tonight. But that's resulted in these separate four parcels that are before you tonight. As you also heard from Ms. OMB, we're requesting three separate parcels. I did notice it was typed incorrectly on the agenda and was asked about it, so I wanted to get into the record that we've not dropped the R12 part of our request. We're asking for just over 80 acres of R12, 32 and a half, just over 32 and a half acres of R10, and just over 102 acres of R8, all conditional districts. The nature of that conditional zoning is that it is site plan specific. You heard that from Ms. OMB. I always like to lift that up because it's an important feature for both you, your colleagues here at the city, but also for the neighbors because it's predictable and transparent. If this plan is approved and we're able to move forward, what you see is what you get. And there won't be, new roadways or additional lots or, substantive changes of that nature that weren't shown and deliberated and discussed here tonight. So everybody knows exactly what's coming if it is approved. Also want to lift up that this is an all single-family, detached single-family residential request. So while it is a large amount of acreage and a large request, it's all single-family detached. That said, we submit to you and that it does meet a large spectrum of single-family detached homes. And that was important to us. In reading the city's comprehensive planning documents, we understand that that's important to the city. As you look to provide housing, obviously the fastest growing city in the triad, we know that it's important to provide that housing across the spectrum and meet buyers everywhere that they may come in, whether it be a family looking for a large home, whether it be an active adult looking to downsize, and meeting folks everywhere along that path. So this is just to get us oriented. This is just from Google Earth. This map is oriented true north-south. So north is to the top of the screen, south is to the bottom of the screen. The red star here indicates our subject property. So you'll notice it's the large undeveloped area there in the middle of the screen. You do see the golf fairways. Existing golf course, of course, is there. Other things I want to note is the homes to the north. That's the existing Mill Creek. The part of the neighborhood that has been built. And to the south, you see downtown, of course, and the neighborhoods are, immediately outlying neighborhoods from downtown. You see development both to the east and the west. There's several new developments still coming out of the ground. You see some construction here on this particular shot, but Ms. OMB mentioned several of them. There's a lot of neighborhoods both partially completed or about to be started to the east and west of this development. And of course, notably, you see Highway 119, which is a substantial improvement and a big feature that makes this northern part of the city so desirable and such an important growth frontier for the city because it's so easy to get here and to get back on the interstate and head to other places if you live in this area and you want to go somewhere else besides downtown. So we are right in the middle of all that. And I'll go ahead and point out here that, you'll notice there's development all around. There's already a lot going on here. And this area, we've alluded to the fact that and you also heard Ms. Owenby mention, there was an approved plan here, is an approved plan here. It's already underway. The Mill Creek community was originally contemplated and entitled by your predecessors in September of 1993. So there's a reason it has sat here open, ready and waiting, as I said, because it's been determined and previously approved for residential development. So we're excited to share with you our vision of how to make that come to fruition. And just to remember where we started, this is our historical starting point. This is that 1993 plan. This is a picture of a picture. This hangs on the wall here in City Hall. A lot of you probably familiar with it. I know Miss Hadley is very familiar with this from her work on the project, but this is just a renderized version of what was adopted back then. It's interesting and it provides great context for us to understand how we got here to this. What I would suggest to you is really a drop-in puzzle piece, infill development. Even though it's large, Mebane has developed all around it, and that's because it's been contemplated and waiting to come to fruition for quite some time. So this is our site plan that is before you tonight. This is a zoomed out, renderized version of it. Again, just emphasizing that theme of how this is dropping in to the city and to the existing circumstances of this area. This time we're flipped counterclockwise. So the left side of your screen is now north. The right side of your screen is south. Just the way that the acreage lays out, it's a little bit easier to get it all on one screen that way. So you've got 119 over to your left and bottom, and then you've got North First Street across the bottom of the screen with Stagecoach over to the right of your screen. So you can see here, again, the existing Mill Creek there on the left-hand side or the north. You see Stagecoach, 9th Street, Laramie Drive to the south. Of course, getting on into downtown as you go off screen there to the right. You see Tupelo Junction and Tupelo North to our immediate east or the top of the screen here. Along the west side, you have Potter's Mill there on the corner. You have the subdivision that Ms. Owenby mentioned that's coming before you next month or in a couple months rather, there to our immediate west, and then across First Street, you've got a Dan Ryan community also under construction there. So lots going on in this area. It's been very active. Of course, I don't have to tell you all that. I know you've been seeing it here month after month as this has all come to fruition. Also want to focus or draw your attention to the golf course here. It's important to note there's a lot of development going on across the state that looks to redevelop and fill in golf courses. That is not the case here. We want to keep and add to the golf course community, keep that going and just finish the development around it as was originally contemplated over 30 years ago. So excited to keep that feature and add to it. Also want to point out, of course, Mill Creek. The namesake does run right through the middle of the site, and it is a very significant environmental resource and feature of this development site. It's what leads to that conservation designation on your comprehensive plan that we'll talk about. It's one of the reasons that we need to modernize and reimagine the Mill Creek plan, if you will, from that adopted version 30 years ago. That version predates your watershed ordinance. It predates our current Department of Environmental Quality standards and impact provisions on how we cross stream features like this. So the plan needs an update for the new regulatory landscape that we're under, but also for new existing conditions and what I'll call the market of Mebane now. The original plan, for example, called for some multifamily and commercial within Mill Creek. I think we know now that we don't necessarily need those land use components here. What we need is single family housing at all styles and varieties to meet that spectrum of home ownership and single family housing at as many levels as we can in a development like this. So we've also modernized for what I'll call the market, if you will, to continue to embrace and grow the way that we've seen Mebane growing, and that is directed by the city's adopted comprehensive planning.
A quick question, Ms. Odian. Just, I guess, from a legal standpoint, what would be the impact if we did not update the land development, especially since we had old environmental regulations? I mean,
The zoning from 93 is a R12 cluster done under a special use permit. We didn't really have conditional zoning back then. So it could still be applied, but it would certainly take some, I guess, creative collaboration to kind of figure out exactly how to apply that now. We know that we can't cross the stream in the place that the 93 plan contemplated crossing it, for example. So it would certainly have to be an endeavor to bring that forward. But your point is well taken that, yes, the site is entitled for an R12 cluster subdivision. So
that there would be a significant environmental impact if we stuck with the old plans.
well, I honestly don't know how that would overlay because, of course, zoning is just one step in the process. I always tell everyone it's permission to try. So if you give us that permission, one of the things we have to go do is go work with DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, and get all those permits and stream crossings. And, just because it's zoned doesn't mean they have to say yes. So
Actually, as I recall, I went on the council in November. This was approved, I think, in September. This was done just before the city adopted its watershed ordinances, which my understanding would have been that the plat that was approved as far as the city ordinances goes would still be okay. There may be problems with the state environmental issues, but this was adopted before Mebane put their watershed ordinance in place intentionally.
that is correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would, urge us to focus on what I would call a benefit then that we are moving forward and embracing your current watershed planning. Just for example, we've got stormwater management ponds that you'll see throughout our plan that are required now per that ordinance. We know now that that's how you need to treat your impervious surface in a watershed. Your watershed impervious surface is also limited now to 30%. Not only are we honoring that, but we're coming in under it at 27%. So you see the impacts of that ordinance in effect in this plan, and I would suggest to you is a benefit of that updating and modernization that I spoke of. So also, again, from this zoomed out view, you can see how this drops into not only existing Mill Creek, the golf course, but all those other communities that we've talked about. Our zoning context, of course, we not only want to think about where we started and what we're dropping into, but also what the zoning regulatory landscape is. What does our zoning quilt look like? Because we want that to be reasonable and compatible. So you see the red star here, again, demarcating our general area of our subject property. And that bright yellow that you see is that R12 cluster zoning that is entitled by that special use permit from the 90s. So that's R12 there. You also see around us R8 and some R10. So our decision to ask for R12, R10, and R8 districts, we'll get into the specifics of those in a moment, but that was very intentional to be harmonious and in keeping with the zoning quilt that you see here. So not trying to introduce brand new districts that are anywhere on the map.
So all of the existing Mill Creek homes are R12,
R12 cluster.
R12 cluster.
Yes, sir. And clustering, just in case anyone is wondering, is a mechanism in the ordinance whereby you can reduce the lot dimensions to cluster the lots closer together and therefore preserve more open space. In this case, the preservation of the open space was largely achieved through the golf course. When we just started learning about conservation subdivisions, you'll remember this, Councilwoman, when they first started becoming a thing in the early 2000s, late 90s, the original conservation subdivisions were golf course communities. So this plan was really very progressive in that way, in that it was one of the first conservation subdivisions that I'm aware of, and did that through the golf course. So
Mr. Bishop.
Ashley's going to clarify one item.
Oh, I just wanted to mention there is a portion of Mill Creek that is zoned R8 that closest to the entrance at St. Andrews Drive that's denser is zoned differently.
That's
Oh,
correct.
yeah, and there is a commercial component too that's never been developed.
Right. And that R8 component, it was also a departure from that original plan. So, this isn't the first time that it's been modified from its original purview. That was a smaller surgical change, I would say.
You mentioned the no more need for multifamily or commercial, but if I understand you correctly, this isn't impacting the commercial that's left of St. Andrews on the entrance. That strip still remains commercial.
And I guess I should clarify, what I mean is, we're not looking to introduce any of that into this plan. Our basis for coming before you and requesting a rezoning isn't to change the land use from residential single family to, something else. And I think part of that understanding is that we understand it's been factored in elsewhere. I know there was a proposal before you a few months ago to maybe work on some of that. So it's being handled elsewhere. We didn't feel like it needed to be added to with this proposal.
Noted.
Just one other thing about the zoning context. I mentioned we chose our districts with intentionality. So not only are they compatible with and sensical with what's around us, but they're also seeking to serve a larger objective, which again is pulled straight from your comprehensive planning to provide a wide variety of housing options. So to do that, we wanted to create different districts that lend themselves to different types of homes and create different types of elements that could be important to different buyers. So the other big starting point of your analysis, of course, in any zoning decision is your comprehensive plan guidance. So we look at Mebane by design. You heard some of this from Ms. Owenby, but in the map here, and the large map is just an inset of your Mebane by design. The red circle indicates our subject area, and you can see it circled on the legend as well. It's a G4 secondary growth area. You've heard this already. This is all about growth that's supported by your existing infrastructure. So that's an important statement. What that means is that the city has identified here that we don't want to have to extend and create outposts to grow in this location. We want to utilize the investments and infrastructure we've already made. So when we looked at those aerial before, when we looked at the site plan rendering dropped into the larger context, we saw that there was development all around. And we know that Mebane has grown here intentionally and has infrastructure in place. There's water, there's sewer, there's a road network. So what this plan needs to do to meet this directive of growing from existing infrastructure is to drop into those systems and make use of them so that the city, one, isn't having to sit on an investment of infrastructure that isn't contributing to its full extent, and two, isn't being asked to keep extending and keep going further and further when you've got places like this that are already served. So that's what the secondary growth area is all about. In this area, this project is well set up for that because, again, it's been 30 years in the making. We also know that your comprehensive plan here directs with management goal 1.4 to ensure that adequate community facilities are integrated into new development. And that's just the next step of what I was just saying. Yes, there's infrastructure in place that's been created to serve the existing development, but now that this is new development and it's coming in, it also needs to be responsible for contributing to that network and supporting itself and supporting future growth upon it. So the city can grow within itself rather than having to expand perhaps in a leapfrog fashion. We're also asked to look at protection or open space and natural resource protection goal 4.3 here, which seeks to support park, greenway, and open space expansion in developed and developing areas. So here we'll look at this more, but we're meeting that in a couple different ways. One, we talked about this as an important conservation corridor along the stream. We're meeting that. You saw we've got over 66 acres of open space, keeping that stream corridor undisturbed. Again, we talked about the fact that one of the reasons this plan does need to be modernized and revamped is to embrace those environmental protections that we have now that we didn't have previously. And then, of course, we're going to talk about this in a moment. We are providing the city's objective for accessing those open spaces and creating a network through the multi-use path contributions that we're going to talk about. So again, we've got residential land use. We've got a placement of appropriate density in housing where it can be supported by existing infrastructure. And we're creating additional contributions to those networks in the way of sewer, road improvements, recreation opportunities, and connectivity. Both are tripart connectivity, vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian. So just sort of bullet pointing there the ways that we utilized your comprehensive planning objectives and came back to you with a plan that we submit meets those directives. Just real quickly moving through some of your principles and goals. Again, ensuring that we're consistent. When we do these things, we try to be intentional and make sure that we are meeting the invitation that's been put forth through the city's adopted processes and plans. Principle 2, move to a road network. That means as opposed to cul-de-sac street networks, one way in, one way out, cul-de-sacs. We now look to plan with a road network with multiple points of connection. Principle 3, move to conservation development. We've talked about that. This plan was always a conservation development. We're keeping those aspects in place and adding to them by better protecting the corridor and the watershed. Goal 1.1, provide affordable, attractive, and quality housing. This does that. We've had housing on the books here for 30 years, and we hope that you'll agree we are submitting and presenting a plan that does that at all many parts of the housing spectrum, and providing attractive and quality housing at multiple price points and element points. Goal 1.4, adequate community facilities. We've talked about that. It's so important in your comprehensive plan. It shows up a few times. But that's all about adding to that network and ensuring that it can continue to grow and support a growing Mebane. Encouraging pedestrian and bicycle transportation. We're going to talk about that in detail in a moment through the multi-use path contributions. Open space and park connectivity. We've talked about that. Open space and natural resource protection. We've talked about. Mebane by Design is, of course, a broad, comprehensive planning document. But just last year, you guys, the city adopted your bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. It was adopted just about a year ago in early 2024. So we have some very clear directives on how do we accomplish that connectivity in the bike and ped realm that we saw looked at broadly in Mebane by Design. So here we have a couple of excerpts from that plan. On your left-hand side there, that's the entire pedestrian improvement map. That's the whole city. And what you're looking at here is the multi-use path or greenway, as it sometimes is called, network. So those green trails, if you will, or green lines indicate places where that multi-use path is to go. And that gets accomplished over time via development plans, private development coming in and going through that TRC process and being told this plan is in place, it's been adopted, you need to provide for that. And also through a series of 10 projects that were identified as priority projects to implement your bicycle and pedestrian plan. And those 10 projects were pulled out and expressly identified as projects that the city wanted to pursue with or without private development. So we'll look at those in a moment and see how those apply as well. The right-hand side of your screen, just real quick, is zooming in on our part of the world. So you can see that's North First Street there on the left-hand side, Lake Michael down there to the bottom right. And you see a series of green lines in the middle that traverse the subject property. So clearly, this part of Mebane, this subject property, is in play when we look at the adopted bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan, and it's got some critical connection points that can be made and contributed through this development that we're excited to be doing. I talked momentarily about those 10 high priority projects that were pulled out. The bike and ped plan had a whole series of strategies and goals about how to get from conceptualization to realization. And part of that was identifying 10 projects that it wanted the city to, and the city adopted this and approved and said, we're going to go after these now. We're going to look for grants, budget allocations where appropriate, and control our own destiny in making these 10 things happen. Well, it so happens that two of them are actually within our realm here with this project, MUP3 and MUP4. So again, on the left-hand side, you see the whole adopted plan here. You see where those 10 projects are across the city. You see the top there, 3 and 4. The inset shows it more close up, that those two priority projects can be applied to this development. So that first one, MUP3, is the North First Street multi-use path. You can see the inset here. What this particular priority project seeks to do is create a multi-use path, a connection point from downtown all the way up to the northern extent of existing Mill Creek. That's that green line that follows North First Street here. You can see it runs by Kate's Farm Park on the left-hand side. To the right-hand side of that green line is the Mill Creek area, and partially our subject property. So what I want to show here is the inset there just below the text that I've copied from your plan is an inset from our proposed site plan. And what you can see there is the part of this, the part of our subject property, our submitted plan that runs along North First Street. We are providing, you see the green line on our little plan, we'll look at it in larger scope later, is providing that connection point from the Kate's Farm Park entrance back to what we'll look at in a moment, which is MUP4, which is the leg of the multi-use path that follows the Mill Creek stream corridor. So it is completing part of that project the city already identified as being a priority project. The city already identified as something it was going to go after of its own accord. Well, this project goes ahead and completes that part of it for you. So that is that recreational contribution that Ms. OMB mentioned in her staff report, part of it. And it is one illustration of how we are meeting that broader directive to provide adequate public facilities within the development planning process and within the private development that occurs. Similarly, just to the east of there, our project plan also coincides with what's called MUP4. This is also, of course, on that list of 10 priority projects that was called out for immediate implementation, and this project can deliver on that. That part of the Greenway or multi-use path network is to connect North First Street all the way to Lake Michael Park. So, of course, this project covers the section from North First Street to Tupelo Junction, right there in the middle. So we can, and you'll see in our site plan that we do deliver on that so that there is that multi-use path connection that meets that objective of MUP4. We're also delivering on an additional leg of the network here. It's not identified in your 10 priority projects, but it is identified and on your adopted plan. So therefore, it gets brought into this project and can be delivered as well. And that is the alternate route to get between First Street and Lake Michael Park. It's a little bit further south, closer to downtown. It's at the bottom of the screen there, below that MUP4 designation. But it is that additional leg of the network, if you will, that gets you from North First Street over to Tupelo Junction and eventually over to Lake Michael. So
One
that is
quick clarification, just
Yes, ma'am.
because I did have a community member ask me about this from an earlier iteration of this. I think an earlier iteration had a greenway path going behind those homes, kind of between the yards on Laramie and on that one section of, I guess, yellow right there. But it does look like you have moved that so that you're going to leverage the sidewalk network on the other side.
That's right. So that was a comment we heard to.
Right there, yep.
Yep, we got some feedback that our neighbors weren't excited about the idea of the greenway running back there. So what we've done is we worked with staff. So now you see the green line comes up from the roundabout that was talked about, comes up from North First Street, follows the stream corridor here, then snakes around the back of our proposed lots to get back to this side of the property, and then it joins the other leg of the network, which comes up from Potter's Mill, crosses through here. There it joins the sidewalk network, as you mentioned, and then both join together to head on up into Tupelo Junction. And that's heading into this part of your adopted plan that eventually gets you over to Lake Michael through your other approved projects. So thanks for asking. So again, this is a large part of that multi-use path network or greenway network that's being constructed and dedicated to the city, completely pursuant to the city's adopted bike and ped transportation plan. So that's that plan working for you and coming to fruition, and taking some chunks out of two of your big priority projects and going ahead and getting a third leg as well. All right, this is our site plan. This is a renderized version. It makes it a little more digestible than the black and white CAD drawings that we look at during TRC. But of course, if there's not a detail here that you're asking about, it's in those black and white versions, so we can look at it. But for the sake of conversation, we did want to provide this renderized, colorized version. I want to say off the top, I'm going to spend some time here going through several features of the site plan. In case you're wondering, I'm going to hand it over to our expert, Caroline, to talk about traffic improvements. So I'm not going to go through those in my comments, but Caroline will. Also, as you hear me talk, you'll hear me talk about existing Mill Creek or the north side. That's, of course, that left-hand side of your screen, as we've said. New Mill Creek, the south side, the undeveloped portion is the right-hand side of our screen, if you hear me mention those distinctions. Again, I want to highlight that this site plan is part of the rezoning if approved. So the maximum lot count, it's a maximum, not a mandate, cannot be exceeded. The road connections that we're going to talk about can't be changed or one removed. The important aspects of the sewer and water infrastructure planning that we've committed to and that Mr. Holt has detailed in his technical memo to you, all of that is committed in this site plan. So you're ensured to have those important features. There's also a set of conditions that go with that we'll talk about later that go with the site plan to further memorialize the commitments that you see here. Again, the starting point for all of this is, once we looked at the guidance from your comprehensive plan, looked at our zoning landscape, then we have our existing conditions that we're dropping into. And there's a lot of those here that we needed to be intentional to when we looked at laying this out. The importance of preserving the golf course as a feature of not only this community, but of Mebane and the region as a whole. The importance of being sensitive and compatible to the existing homeowners in Mill Creek. This is an established neighborhood. They've had stub roads stubbing to these pods for 30 years now. So when this, if this is going to come to fruition, it needs to do so in the right way. And be thoughtful to the fact that we do have existing homeowners in place. We also wanted to be thoughtful and intentional to our other neighbors around the perimeter. We've got homes on Laramie Drive that we've talked about to the south. We've got homeowners to our east in Tupelo Junction. We've got a large property owner to our east on the north side over on Orange County, whose land is yet to be developed, but wants to be thoughtful about how this interacts with his property. And of course, we've got development oncoming to the west, just off of North First Street, that this site plan does interact with. So a lot of existing conditions. Again, I've said it before, but this is why this truly is an infill project. We're not out in open space on our own, kind of setting the stage for the first time. Rather, we are the puzzle piece dropping in to a lot of existing conditions that need to fit. So let's talk about the north side of the development or existing Mill Creek first. That's over here. So a couple of things I'll call out. Again, the 1993 plan was predicated on an R12 cluster development. So we felt like it was important to preserve that R12 base for zoning here. So the R12 conditional zoning does not seek to remove that R12 designation, but just seeks to clarify it within the context of our plan. Importantly, we are, of course, using the cluster mechanism as the previous plan did, but with great intentionality, we did not decrease the minimum lot width, and we did not decrease the setbacks. And that's because we wanted to keep the massing consistent. Massing is sort of the word for what you feel when you drive down the streetscape, and the breadth and the pace of how that road looks with the setbacks, and creating continuity there. So we kept those aspects in place, again, as a way to make sure that we were creating some compatibility and cohesion with the existing neighborhood there. We also wanted to make sure that we again brought the plan forward. So we've already talked about the addition of stormwater ponds that you can see here. Another big important addition that did not exist in the 1993 plan is the extension of St. Andrews Drive here, off the east side of the property to the top of your screen. That will tie into the approved road network of Tupelo Junction North that you can kind of see here in our background data. So what that does is ensure another outlet for existing Mill Creek to get up to Lebanon Road or over to Stagecoach. We talked about the fact that previously there was a connection across this part of the stream that would have created that north to south travel for cars in the plan. We can't do that now under the current guidance and directive of DEQ. So we've relocated that ability to get across to the south side of town by connecting to the existing approved, soon to be existing roads in Tupelo Junction North. And that's, I would submit to you, a good addition, benefit again to the new framework that we're working under to provide another outlet there.
Building on that, can you speak about the impact of Orange County Schools, bus routes, and previous bus routes versus this eventual new bus routes?
So Orange County Schools does participate in the TRC process. They've been on those calls and have, put their input in. This of course is not the only subdivision that straddles. So, their comments were, put into that TRC process and answered and met. So we don't have any pending or outstanding concern from Orange County
It
Schools.
looks like it's going to reduce the travel into Alamance
Well-
County to get Orange County students
So
significantly.
certainly you're way ahead of me. One of the reasons that we like connectivity, that it's such a strong directive, not only in your unified development ordinance, but also in your comprehensive planning, and you see it, manifested in places like this, is because connectivity is important for school bus routing, for emergency service access, for the homeowners who live here. If there's a catastrophic event blocking, somewhere up here, there's another way for people to get out. So connectivity is an important aspect for all kinds of important objectives to the city. And this is one way that we've developed on that, or developed on the old plan to add some better connectivity now. There's also a mail kiosk in this pod, so that folks who live up here don't have to drive in, get their mail here, and then drive back through the neighborhood to go home. Wanted to eliminate those unnecessary trips. We've got some important buffering that I'll talk about in a moment. Buffering gets its own slide. We also have some intentional kind of reserved open space, if you will, just ways to ensure that breathability and some open space planning gets into the plan, so that it doesn't, it's sure to happen. If we approve it this way, then we're sure to have little niceties like these lots here are not platted back to back. They'll have this space in between them. We've got this area here that gives some space between the lots and our existing neighbors over here, our neighbors across the street in our new development. Same over here, just trying to create, when it made sense and when we could work it into the plan, areas where we captured some of that open space and worked with the layout rather than trying to do too much.
You have two different colors of green in some of this open space. What does that signify? Like near
Mhm.
that mail kiosk in the upper section is a darker green, but across the street is the
So-
lighter green. What's the significance of that?
Yes, thank you for your question. So this is just a rendering, but what we were trying to convey is that there are undisturbed parts of open space, importantly along the stream corridor, where there's going to be no grading, no clearing, no activity whatsoever, and they remain undisturbed. That's that dark, heavy green. There are other areas where we will need to, we want to set the right expectation that because of activity that's occurring to create what you see here, we don't want to create an expectation that it's undisturbed. So those are the lighter green areas where we're showing that, yes, it's open space. It'll, of course, be nicely landscaped and put it back in a state that's attractive, but it's not that undisturbed state where it's untouched.
Right. I was actually referring to something else. If you look at the mail kiosk at the top, can you highlight that?
Yes.
There's a dark green behind that right there. That's not undisturbed, right?
It's not. So the mail kiosk will sit sort of in that common area, if you will.
Is that a more manicured, whereas the lighter
Yes.
green across the street is more natural, or should I not read anything into that at all?
I think you're on the right path. So yes, it's that darker green where the mail kiosk sits. It'll have some improvements on it. It has to be accessible by car. It has to have an ADA compliant parking spot. So while it will sit in a nice manicured kind of common area, we didn't want to call it out as undisturbed open space or as a buffer. What we'll talk about, a lot of the light green indicates more of the unimproved buffer areas or open space areas. So let's see, we talked about the yellow lots here that you see on the north are R12, why that's important for compatibility and cohesion and keeping some harmony with the existing neighborhood. Also wanted to point out, again, a very important directive for this area was not only use the infrastructure we've got, but build upon it so that we can continue to be well set up for future growth. So to that end, we have included, there's a 15-inch sewer outfall. I believe it ends somewhere in this area. Currently, we're going to go ahead and extend it all the way up to our eastern extent here of St. Andrews. And that's really not for the benefit of this project. That's to go ahead and have it done if and when projects to the east come in, so that those properties will have access to that outfall when they need them, and that will, be at the ready when and if that growth happens. Also wanted to point out, HOA matters are not a zoning matter, of course, but just to the extent that it speaks to compatibility and cohesion, the existing circumstance that this property currently has is that the north side, existing Mill Creek, is part of the current Mill Creek HOA structure. It is encumbered by that declaration and by that HOA scheme. The south side is not. That's by that status is by a recorded instrument that was recorded in 2006. So that's been on record for quite some time, and we came into that structure and have not and do not seek to disturb it. So the north side will, the lots that we're proposing will be a part of that HOA structure. They'll have to comply by the same architectural standards, by the same architectural review, by the same dues and assessment scheme, and the south side will have to have its own. So for
Quick
that,
question about
yes,
that,
ma'am.
because I know through my day job, I've done a lot of work in that neighborhood. And in terms of like exterior building materials, you can't do vinyl on the exteriors in that neighborhood. So even for like the south side, that's not going to be a part of it. Is Lennar seeking to do the same thing or keeping with the same like hardy plank or brick or stone exterior?
So yes, actually, and we'll look at that when we get to the additional commitments that I alluded to. But we do have a building material commitment for the entirety of the request here, not just the north side, that does establish those building materials that you're mentioning.
Great. And when we get to that point, will we also talk about specifically like the homes that back up to the golf course, even if they are in the south side? What if those are kind of in line with existing requirements too?
Certainly, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So thank you for mentioning that. But yes, I was going to talk about that when we look at houses, but that's an important aspect of compatibility that we didn't want to ask for or introduce any kind of new, new standard or change from what everyone else in Mill Creek had to adhere to. We've actually already worked with the Architectural Review Committee and submitted preliminary building elevations for some of the homes that we'd be looking to do there, and have received preliminary approval that they do meet with those requirements. So,
Can you briefly touch on your outreach? It sounds like you've talked with the HOA quite a bit.
yes. And if you don't mind, I've got several comments lined up for that. So yes, sir. All right, moving to the south side. Just again, going through a couple of important site features that I want to make sure to call out. This is where you start to see the introduction of the R10 and the R8 districts. R8 is the purple. R10 is that gold or beige that you see there in the middle. And again, because we didn't have existing homes built on this side, because we don't have, we have sort of a natural demarcation at the creek, and it creates sort of a different, the opportunity for a slightly different identity on this side of the creek. This is where we wanted to have the opportunity to introduce some additional housing options and formats that don't currently exist in Mill Creek, and provide some other types of home buyers the opportunity to find home here at Mill Creek and in Mebane. So that's where you see these additional districts. The R10 district there in the middle here, this is going to be an age-targeted home. We'll look at it in a moment, but not deed restricted, but just age-targeted, meaning it's built with the type of features that aged active adult age-targeted buyers tend to want to look for. All on one-story living, full exterior maintenance, the types of finishes and interior treatment that a home buyer is looking for when they're stepping down to that home after their big house, if you will. So that's one thing we're introducing here. We're introducing with the R8, of course, smaller lots. So as you know, this is not anything new to the city of Mebane. It is something that we're seeing a lot of home buyers want now. They still want a decent amount of square footage. They want bedrooms. They want family living. They want a garage, but they want a smaller lot for a couple reasons. One, they don't want to have to take care of the large lot. And two, they want to be able to achieve some different price points and to have some different options of, how to allocate their home budgets. So the way that we can do that is with smaller lots, but still providing the architectural and building material commitments that are commensurate and provide that cohesion across the community and that high level of quality. Because again, the objective and the mandate from your comprehensive planning was a variety of affordable quality housing. So we wanted to keep all three of those aspects when we looked at what we could do here. Let's see. You have, of course, HOA amenities on the south side. You see a pool and clubhouse here. You see some, again, just intentional open spaces. These could remain passive. These could be eventually programmed with little tot lots or pocket parks, pollinator gardens, gathering gazebos. Once the neighborhood is underway, the marketing team is on the ground, and they see and start getting feedback what the HOA and what the buyers would like to have in those areas. Those can become more programmed, but again, reserved on the plan and on the plat, so that those opportunities are there. R12, again, we talked about why we have it over here. We also have it here. These light yellow lots are also R12. That's one of the evolutions from where we started to where we are now that I think have made this plan better. And that's just because our neighbors here along Laramie Drive, those lots were created in the county, came in from the county, and they're large. They're large lots to be inside the city. So with that proximity there, we do have a very healthy buffer there, which we'll talk about in a moment, but we also wanted to provide the R12 lots across on the other side of that buffer, just so the disparity between the lot sizes would be more stepped down. We also have, again, we talked about connectivity earlier on the north side, but we've also created 3 additional connectivity points on the south side. These, when I say additional, I mean as compared to the 1993 plan. One is here. This is to Beeline Lane that is in Tupelo Junction to our east. One is here, Rolling Wheel road that connects to Stagecoach Corners, which is to our south. Of course, we have the 9th Street extension connection that was always contemplated in the 1993 plan. But we also have a feature connection here down to North First Street. You saw the roundabout in Miss OMB's slides. It was talked about, but that's a big deal. That was not contemplated previously. Of course, now we know with everyone coming north-south to get on Highway 119, North First Street is a very important arterial thoroughfare in the city. And with placing density here amongst the network that already exists, staff knew and we agreed that it was important to provide access to that network. North First Street is there. It's a big mover of traffic, so we wanted to be able to utilize that in the plan. It was asked, how does that happen with needing to be collaborative with another developer and with another project? So that is managed by a developer agreement. There's also some timing conditions that Ms. ONB detailed to you to ensure that it happens. But we're working on that collaboratively with the development team that's working on this piece here. And we've done it by development agreement that we'll share it. We'll share that infrastructure in a way that has been agreed upon. And if they don't get to it by the time we need it, that 101st lot is our trigger point, then we've got some mechanisms by which we can go on and build it. So that's how that commitment is handled.
I'm just curious what happens if council doesn't approve the other proposal?
Well, then if
You get no roundabout?
we have to do it. That staff can clarify that if they'd like, but the way that condition is written that Ms. OMB read to you is that we can't plat more than 100 lots until and unless there is a connection to North First Street. So there's a couple ways it could happen, but the determinative threshold is that you can't plat that 101st lot until that connection is made. If the first connection made is through the development, over here, she showed you a possible connection, then we have to bond this. So either way, it's definite that improvement will be made.
Are you saying that you could go past the 101st lot with just one of the connections to 190 to First Street, or both? You have to have both.
So it has to either be the main one here that you see on our plan, or if they happen to get this one in first, then we can use that in the meantime, so long as this is bonded, so that it can come online when asked.
So you bond the connection. Does that mean that regardless, like Jonathan's question, regardless of this property is developed or not approved by council, you still put a roundabout in, not just a connection?
Correct. Not just the connection. The roundabout is part of that commitment.
I'm not trying to belabor the point,
No, it's an important one.
but okay, if this other possible project comes along, say it is approved, but it's moving much slower, and Lennar is,
Moving-
approved and is moving quicker, I mean, is that developer agreement what kicks in?
Right. So if we get to the point where we really want to do 101 and we don't want to wait anymore, or it's not going to come fast enough, then that's when they can control their own destiny and move forward.
Okay, and then I feel like this is a silly question, but where it is a red star and says monument, is that also a mail kiosk?
Oh, no, that's not a silly question. Thank you. That's just denoting where there would be placemaking identity signs that would identify the neighborhood that you're in. And you'll note they're at the perimeters where we've got neighborhoods butting up against each other. So while all this connectivity we've been talking about is very important, we still like to have, neighborhood placemaking and identification so that, as you move from Tupelo Junction into Mill Creek Preserve, you know when you've made that change.
You.
Mhm. All right, let's see.
All of the R10 is age targeted, I believe is the word used, even across the street, or just the central circle?
So I don't think we've decided yet. It could go across, but right now the idea is that it would just be this interior enclave. That said, the lots are sized that it could extend if it's very well performing And I think that opportunity is there, but right now the thought is that it would just be here.
And age targeted means lawns mowed?
Yes, full exterior maintenance.
And do you get a sprinkler system with that so that your lawns look nice?
I'll have to let Eric speak to the details of that,
How that
but
works.
yes, there is obviously a vested interest in keeping it nice because exterior maintenance would also mean that,
Yeah.
the HOA is replacing if it doesn't
Yeah, that's true.
perform. So,
I guess for Mr. Brown, is that a voluntary condition or are you saying you have to think about it, Mr. Hodier? Mrs. Hodier, sorry.
I need to talk with my folks and understand what their exterior package includes. But, of course, since it's a commitment for exterior maintenance, if something's dead, we would have to replace it anyway. So I imagine that they've probably got some program in place that seeks to not let that happen. The other thing I wanted to get to real quick as we talk about site plan features is the greenway path. We looked at those in isolated context and how they drop in and relate to your entire adopted bike ped plan, but I just wanted to show it to you here in context. We talked about this a little bit, Councilwoman Burkholder, but you see how the green lines connect and provide those adopted connections and pathways from your 2024 bike and ped plan. So you see all of that here. It's a multi-use path. In some places, it does overlap with the sidewalk system. When and where that happens, the sidewalk has to be enhanced. It's a wider detail so that a 5-foot sidewalk isn't expected to do both jobs. But again, that does meet that directive. We worked closely with staff to accommodate that feedback from neighbors, but still meet the comprehensive plan. I do want to, yes,
Sorry.
sir.
So if somebody in the southern part, there's a multi-use path all the way to Lake Michael that's been approved, if this is approved from the southern part.
Yes, it's my understanding,
completes
staff
that
knows
connectivity.
better than I do, but yes, that happened through Tupelo Junction and some other.
And from the
subdivisions.
northern part of Mill Creek,
That's just
you
where
would-
I was,
oh,
just what I was
okay.
going to talk about. Yes,
All right,
sir.
great.
So thank you. So when we got this question at planning board too, from some planning board members and from some neighbors that we heard from, the greenway connections, of course, do not cover the northern part. And so first and foremost, we're adhering to the adopted comprehensive plan of where those multi-use paths are. So there were not internal, east-west connection points on this side. So we're adhering to it and not, not making it up as we go. So that's why the network is where it is. However, that said, remember I talked about when we looked at your adopted plan, MUP3, which was a priority adopted project that the city had already adopted for itself the commitment to implement those aspects of the plan. The rest of MUP3, we talked about where it is down here that we can do, but it continues. So MUP3 is on the books. It's just not something that this project has frontage on and can control or affect. But MUP3, it's not forgotten that does need to continue on. It went to the northernmost extent of Mill Creek so that those folks would be able to walk out, hop on that multi-use path, and get down to North First Street and Kate's Farm Park that way. As for the MUP4 goal, which is to get over to Lake Michael, while we do not have the connection across the creek because of the environmental sensitivities that we have to adhere to, what you can do, of course, this is a sidewalked development, of course, everything in Mebane is now. So our sidewalks connect through here. You can connect through Tupelo Junction and then make your way over to the multi-use path here and get to Lake Michael Park. So you still do have pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. I'll point out that the multi-use path, of course, it goes without saying that it can't cover every square inch and every single road or, subdivision piece in Mebane, but it works in concert with your sidewalk system. That's why the sidewalks are such an important aspect of your UDO, and the sidewalks can help get us to that multi-use path. And here, we see that exactly at work. This neighborhood connecting to sidewalks and adjacent neighborhoods and getting to that multi-use path. So those networks are created and working well. There was a specific question at planning board, can we not utilize this area down here? There's a driveway that comes up and accesses a maintenance shed for the golf course, which, perhaps, to the naked eye looks like, oh, that could be, a great co-use as a greenway. However, that is a private driveway that serves the golf course maintenance shed where they keep a lot of equipment. The golf course owner and operator was not, that's not part of the project proposal. That area isn't within the parcels, and that's not an additional element that owner is willing to bring to the table. And it's understandable because that's some liability for them if the public were coming off a public greenway and find themselves right at the maintenance shed that houses all the equipment for the golf course. So that's a private drive for a reason. But I did just want to mention and answer that open question from planning board that we did look at that and explore it. So unfortunately, it's not a connection to be made. And I think that this all makes sense. It's no surprise that your adopted plan, y'all just did this a year ago. So it obviously took into account these existing conditions and looked at the places where it made sense and where it was achievable and realistic to get these connection points. And that's exactly what this plan does. But we do have those other alternative mechanisms through the sidewalk system and through the remainder of the MUP3 project that will help accommodate existing homeowners on the north side also access those same amenity features.
So the golf course owner is different than the property owner of this acreage we're talking about?
Well, the golf course has an operator, and there's an arrangement that the golf course operation is pretty autonomous, and they have the authority and the,
Yeah.
as I've mentioned, it's going to be an ongoing golf course.
Yeah, I
That's not
understand.
changing. So they did have some requirements as this developed to ensure that anyone who they did go under contract with and allowed to move forward was willing to meet and accommodate, their requirements and things that they wanted to see, I guess, protected or preserved, if you will, about the golf
And these
course.
property lines along the golf course, those are the same as they were from the 93 plan, or were those defined as part of this?
We have not changed those parcel lines. So those
Okay.
are the remaining parcels that remain in play as the neighborhood has developed since 1993. I don't want to say that they're exactly the same. I don't know that for a fact. We talked about the Highlands changed a little bit along the way, so there could have been some give or take. But yes, this is the remainder parcels as we found them. I know that was a lot of information, but that's sort of the download on some of the highlights of the site plan. Again, Alden West, our civil designer, is here if you have any more specific questions about any of that or anything I didn't cover. I did mention that buffering is an important aspect of our site plan, and it gets its own slide. So I wanted to quickly go over that here. This is a buffer detail plan. It shows you 5 different treatments, if you will, of buffering and landscaping. So we've got the gold areas that denotes where existing vegetation is going to stay, but we felt like we needed to supplement it with more for reasons we'll talk about. The maroon is where existing vegetation is not disturbed and it's doing the job that we want it to do and continue to do. So that's commitments where that existing vegetation will stay exactly in place. The dark teal are new installations of landscaping along, you'll see that those are all interior areas. That's all along the golf course. And then, of course, your light teal is perimeter buffers. Those are also new installations. We don't have UDO required perimeter buffers when we are adjacent to other residential. Your UDO looks at buffering when you have, commercial against residential, industrial against residential, disparate uses. But when you have like to like, your UDO does not require those buffer yards. But we heard feedback about that. We are, of course, dropping into this puzzle, so we wanted to be sensitive. We wanted to be compatible. So we have established some perimeter buffers in some intentional areas that I'll talk about. So the basis for all of the buffer treatment was based on 3 things. One, we wanted to be sensitive to our adjoining property owners at the perimeters. specifically where we had lots platted right up to our perimeter line. So in cases where if we didn't do a buffer, it would result in back-to-back lots, we wanted to address that. We also wanted to be sensitive to and think about the golf course experience. We know, and we've heard a lot about, and one of the things that attracted Lennar to this project is the golf course. It's great and people like it, and we want it to continue to be great and be a feature that people enjoy. So we wanted to ensure that, of course, it's going to change. It's going to look different when you're out there playing, and now there's homes on the south side. But we wanted to be sensitive to that, not only with architecture and building materials, but also with installing landscaping in areas where it needed to be added back to sort of soften those view sheds and create that, preserve that nice feeling on the golf course. So that's what the yellow buffer details indicate. And then we also wanted to be sensitive to views across the golf course. So I talked earlier about how conservation subdivisions also often utilize golf courses. It's not just to play golf. It's also because people enjoy that breathability and that open space around their homes. We wanted to ensure that that still was resonant here as you look across the golf course and enjoy that open space, that you saw some vegetation in those view sheds. So that was the intention that we pursued each of these areas. Again, supplementing or maintaining or creating a golf course buffer is the term we kind of invented here. You can see details down at the bottom. This is the plant detail showing what that would be comprised of. And these are photographs illustrating what our objective here is. These plant details are intended to produce this result. So you see that variety of height, of texture, of material to create those nice opaque screens. Just quickly regarding the perimeter buffers, here we've talked about how we changed the lots on this road to be R12 in deference to our neighbors along Laramie. Another thing we did here was really strengthen this buffer. There's already a 100-foot AT&T easement that runs along this property line. It straddles it. So 50 feet is on their side in their backyards. 50 feet is on our side. We can't touch that. It's going to be there regardless. The trees that are in it, the vegetation, all of that has to stay. So we've already got that 50-foot corridor that runs here. But in addition, we've set ourselves off 30 feet from our 50-foot edge. So it's a total of 80 feet here between the back of these lots and the Laramie lots on the other side. So 80 feet is a nice, healthy separation. Also, with the greenway removed, it no longer runs in that buffer, so that we really could create a nice offset for those large lots that historically were in the county. We continued that, and that's a 30-foot buffer commitment. Again, this is in excess of your ordinance. No perimeter buffer is required here, but we've committed to a 30-foot type B detail. You can see that here. That's pulled straight from your ordinance.
Is that area maintained by the HOA?
Yes, sir. So everything that's not in a platted lot is common area maintained by the HOA. So if something dies or isn't doing well here, the HOA would be the one phone call you have to make to find the responsible party to fix the buffer. So we continued that here. This is a lot that exists, fronts on 9th Street, and you can see was surrounded here by the development. So we gave them that same 30-foot type B screened yard here. Also up here, this was a product of our conversations with the neighborhood. While this is like to like, again, it's another new development, but those lots came right back to the property line. So on our side, we decided to do a set off. The set off is actually 40 feet along this entire co-shared property line with Tupelo Junction. But in this area, we were able to also do a 30-foot planted buffer commitment. In this area, we can't quite achieve 30 feet because of some grade changes. We've got to negotiate. Again, we don't want to create any unreasonable expectations. So we're trying to ensure that we provide the buffer details at a level that can be met. So while the spacing is 40 feet, you get that nice distance. The actual planted width there is 15 to 20 feet because of those grade changes that we have to manage. Yes, sir. Question on that?
No, I was just wondering, I'm losing members.
I'm sorry, I
You got
know.
one back. You want it, are you at a good start? Are you getting ready to go to traffic or?
Yep.
Okay, would you mind if we took a 10-minute break?
Not at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to say this is probably the clearest buffering slide I've ever seen from a developer visually, and
Thank you,
maybe
Mr.
staff can
West.
use this and as an example for others, because this is very easy to understand.
Thank you for that feedback.
All right, we'll stand at recess till exactly 8:45. 7:45.
The good news is you guys
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, excellent. We'll give Amanda a little break. My name is Caroline Sheaves. I'm a professional engineer and I work for DRMP. And my firm prepared the traffic impact analysis for this development. Before I get into all of the details on the improvements that this development is providing to the community, I just kind of want to go give a quick overview of what a TIA is and what that means. So it is a, um, a document that is conducted in conjunction with both the city and the NCDOT. So they provide input every step of the way on our scoping, down to every single intersection that we are studying, as well as our assumptions and our background assumptions, especially. So our TIA incorporated all of the developments that were on the books. And those are listed here: Havenstone, Retreat at Lake Michael, Stagecoach Corner, Landing at Lake Michael, Tupelo Junction, and Saddle Club subdivision. And then our TIA is then reviewed by both the city and NCDOT. And this TIA, since it's so, this development, as Amanda has mentioned before, sort of a puzzle piece into an existing community and future communities, is a little complex. And so, based on some feedback that we had heard from the neighbors, and also, some feedback that we heard from the city and NCDOT, we provided a supplemental agreement or a supplemental analysis, and that detailed those specific 100 units and 50 units as we previously heard. So this slide here is depicting all of the traffic improvements that would be occurring in this area. Obviously, the first thing is the roundabout right here. We have it shown in this slide as background improvements. However, as we have already established that our intent is to partner with this developer here to construct this roundabout. And if they do not move forward, then we would be either constructing it or bonding it to be constructed. Another background improvement is it's a little slow, is a traffic signal up at Stagecoach Road and Lebanon Road. And I do just want to point out again the connectivity that this development provides and how that traffic signal can benefit us. So we have this connectivity here through the development. So if folks are trying to go, the direction over here, they'd be able to use that traffic signal. And also over here, there's that connection through Tupelo Junction. And then this development, we are providing a traffic signal over here at Stagecoach Road and North 5th Street. And this is one item that we have identified previously in our TIA, and our TIAs are based on, lots of regulation and, certain standards that we follow with NCDOT. And we actually, following their standards, were showing in our original TIA that an always stop would be sufficient to mitigate the traffic. But through coordination with the neighbors, we heard a lot of groans about that thought and lots of feedback that they wanted a traffic signal there. And also through coordination with the city and NCDOT, we committed to doing that traffic signal there.
Do you
And then,
happen to know what the speed limit is along Stagecoach in that area?
yes, not off the top of my head, but I can. Oh, 35.
Thank
35.
you.
Yes, 35. And additionally, so we originally were just showing a left turn lane on Stagecoach Road onto 9th Street, sort of entering our site. But through coordination, it was asked of us if we could provide the left turn on the opposite side. And again, not a lot of our site traffic would be expected to be utilizing that. However, we wanted to provide that benefit to the community. And if we're going out there and constructing at the intersection, we committed to installing that. And then the last thing is
Just to reiterate, you didn't need to do that, right, for the TIA? You listened to
yeah,
constituents?
based on our original TIA that we were showing, we were meeting mitigations by just providing that that one left turn
Going
lane.
above
So,
and beyond.
yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. And then additionally, what we committed to doing is restriping the St. Andrews Drive and North First Street. Not adding pavement, but restriping that to add left turn lanes. That pavement's wide enough to do that, and just make that look a little bit nicer as it's an entrance. Overall, I think Councilmember Ewing really hit the nail on the head. We feel like we're going above and beyond here, based on just the feedback that we are getting from the city and NCDOT, as well as the neighbors. And so we're really proud of this development. And I'm gonna pass it back over to Amanda. And I think I'm happy to answer any more questions you may have now, but I know she is eager to wrap up the presentation, and I'd be glad to come back up and answer any questions.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
For those turn lanes on Stagecoach, are you gonna have to widen Stagecoach to make room for those turn lanes?
Yes. We obviously haven't done the full design, but preliminarily looking at it, roads have a certain amount of right of way within them, and typically a 3-lane section is able to fit an existing right of way based on what we were looking at.
It's also my understanding that recently, maybe there was a pedestrian was hit close to that Stagecoach 9th Street intersection. Somebody brought my attention to that in the past week.
Yes.
How does this, does somebody know the details of that and can comment as to why this may help what some people think is a
Sure.
dangerous intersection?
Yeah, so that was brought to our attention as well. I contacted the NCDOT district engineer to see if a investigation was underway on that. Typically, when there's a major accident at an intersection, NCDOT conducts an investigation to determine if there's any engineering that could be done to improve the safety of it. It was such a fresh accident that, of course, that hadn't come across his desk yet in terms of that investigation. But I spoke to him about, if there's anything we can do since we're out there constructing. We'll be out there constructing left turn lanes. Spoke to him if there's anything we can do to help out with that investigation. So made that contact with the NCDOT. And then one thing I do just want to point out is left turn lanes. Left turn lanes it's a stat from the FHWA. Left turn lanes reduce crashes by approximately 50% at intersections. That exact crash, that investigation would determine if what type of error it was, or what type of mitigation could be done. There's certain crashes. I'm not going to say exactly what the cause of that one was, but certain things that can be done at intersections, such as clearing the sight distance to the sight triangles at the intersections, can improve safety. And also there's some crashes where it is just the fault of the driver, and there's not really anything that can be done. So an investigation by NCDOT is something that would determine that, and we'd be more than happy to work with them to determine if there's anything there. But these left turn lanes, based on the FHWA stat, would be expected to reduce crashes.
I could see left turn lanes reducing car crashes, but to me, it would make it more treacherous for pedestrians, because there's more to look at, because there's 3 lanes instead of 2. But is this what kind of pedestrian crossings are typically occurring here? I guess I could imagine them to increase
There's an
this
existing
development.
pedestrian crosswalk there.
At
And
9th Street and Stagecoach. Yeah.
yes, and my understanding is that the pedestrian was in the crosswalk.
Was in the
Yes.
crosswalk. Yes.
Mhm.
Anyone else have any comments or thoughts on that? I'm just a little concerned about that.
As I recall, she was in the crosswalk, and there was a right turning vehicle that blocked her visibility from the vehicle following that vehicle, and that's when she was struck. I don't think a left turn lane would have helped in that situation, but.
And the crosswalk that's there would still be there. It's not going to be
Yes.
altered or improved in any way.
Yeah, the crosswalk would remain.
Just to get a more professional and speak more highly than us, Chief, if this is not an open investigation, could you say a few words, sir? Just some clarifying.
Not more than what we've already
Okay.
discussed now.
council wants to reconvene and talk about that at the next meeting, I'm happy to do that. Speed was a factor, and attention was a factor. That's all I can talk about right now.
Thank you, Chief.
Like flashing the a button you press when you're in the crosswalk, that the lights or something, does it have anything like that out there?
Well, there's no traffic light here, though.
No, no, I mean like a,
Like with the
a
ped
button,
heads.
is there a button, I may not be describing it correctly, but when the pedestrian get ready to walk across the street, they press a button and the lights flash where they're walking? Am
Yeah,
I making
yeah. So
sense?
that typically occurs at signalized intersections.
So it has to have a signal.
Yeah, typically. But one thing that, Amanda just pointed out to me is just this development itself is adding so much pedestrian connectivity to existing neighborhoods and these future residents. And, I can't say that it would prevent anything, any future incidents, but it would provide other options for pedestrian crosswalks. And unfortunately, we do not have the frontage there at that exact intersection to really, add more sidewalks or anything. But if NCDOT would be, open to, based on their investigation, more vibrant signing or something like that to illustrate the
Yellow flags or
crosswalk.
something?
Yeah, yeah. It is Stagecoach is an NCDOT road, so it would be up to them ultimately to determine what could
And
be done.
same with if we wanted to talk to them about a potential like reduction in speed since that is a heavy residential area. And I guess unfortunately too, if somebody disrespects a pedestrian crosswalk, I mean, they're breaking the law as it is now. And unfortunately, people do that not to make excuses by any means, but we've got to get better at figuring out ways to respect the ones that we have. I did have a question as well about, the St. Andrews Drive and North First Street, the way that, that's going. Is this sort of like dead end on St. Andrews Drive extension? Is that gonna be connected up? Is that what that part is?
Yeah. So this is the intersection right there. I know it's kind of hard to see. And it does connect over. So yeah, do you know if we have a zoomed in?
Councilmember Burkholder, they're proposing, right now, there's 2 lanes. In the middle is a striped yellow, no car area. The TIA called for that striped, no car area, yellow line area to be turned into a left turn lane
Mhm.
coming out to North First Street.
I think she's just asking about how it connects down into here. And I know it's kind of hard to visualize.
But that's the TIA related improvement, traffic improvement that's
Okay.
being done. There's already the width there for a left turn lane. The traffic engineer called for that striped, lack of a better word, median, no raised median to be
Mhm.
turned into a left turn lane. So
Okay, I think I probably just need to look at it closer. Thank you.
Sorry.
I assume you mean the actual connection to First Street, not the old attachment at St. Andrews to the old 119. Is that what you're talking about, Preston?
It's the connection to it's St. Andrews Drive and North First Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering the same thing.
Good clarification.
All that got modified with the bypass.
hmm Any other questions for me before I turn it back to Amanda?
Thank you.
All right. Before we move on, just to put a little bit of a finer point on the way that the bike and ped plan speaks exactly to, the unfortunate circumstance of the accident. I think that's, a great illustration of why those plans are so important to provide better ways and means for people to go wherever that person was going that night. So just for example, if we want to imagine that person lived in Tupelo Junction and had walked, from Tupelo Junction out to Stagecoach and down and was going to cross and go into downtown. Now that person could walk on the Greenway and do that and get all the way down to the signalized intersection, or all the way down to North First Street, which we know has that MUP3, which is the North First Street connector. So, of course, we can't always help every distracted driver, everyone who's going to break a law, but we can provide more opportunities to get people off of those, vehicular shared access corridors. And so, that's why those plans are so important, and, why it's important when developments come in that they adhere to them. So, all right, we're going to look at some house plans next, or some illustrations and architectural commitments. So I know that was asked about earlier. So we'll move on to that section, and of course can come back to any traffic or site plan questions as we move forward. So this is our classic collection. This is a group of homes that the developer would be proposing to build on the R12 lots. So notably on the north side of Mill Creek, in the existing Mill Creek, as we've been calling it. I want to point out and highlight and emphasize that we provide these pictures just as illustrations and small examples of versions of what this can look like. This is by no means demonstrative or a mandate of what every single one of those R12 homes is going to look like. This is just a few examples. These are real pictures taken of real Lennar houses, but what the classic collection is it's 12 different options. That's based on 4 different floor plans. We heard some feedback, can you do more, when we were at planning board? So at planning board, we had 3 floor plans in the set. We've added a 4th. And not only is that just an additional floor plan, but it's also a floor plan that lives completely differently because it has a master suite downstairs. So that's different than the other floor plans we were offering. But the floor plan is just part of it. Then you have 3 different facades that could be applied to any of those floor plans. The floor plan, of course, is just the interior shell, excuse me. So what you end up with is 12 different options of what could end up on that streetscape, just in terms of, basic bones of what that home would look like as it sits there. From there, you would then choose your color palette. You would choose your building material palette. Just as you can see from these, sparse examples, just 3 photographs, that can be a variety of, shingle siding, of the hardy plank lat siding. It can be stone, it can be brick. And then you choose your trim and detail options. Again, you see that here. You could have a craftsman pillar. You could have a tapered column. You could have a full column. You could have different garage door treatments. So again, those 12 base options are exponentially expanded as each homeowner would get to choose their, let's call it, skin to the home. That's also, that variability is enforced by zoning condition. So we're not just leaving it to chance that everyone will have, nice different tastes. Our zoning conditions say that a homeowner cannot, or builder cannot build the same floor plan either next door to each other or across the street within 3 lots. Same goes for color scheme and building material scheme. So all 3 of those things are regulated for that variability, so that you're forced to have that difference as you drive down the street. We talked about building materials. Those are committed to throughout the neighborhood, but a special feature of the classic collection, it is the higher square footage. It's the gold package, if you will, or not if you will, that's factual. Lennar has 3 different standards of classic: bronze, silver, and gold. The gold is what they would be utilizing here. And these would be built on a raised foundation or crawl space. And that's, Councilwoman Burkholder, you asked about, how do we make sure that these look right from the golf course, from behind, not just the street? And that's part of that. We wanted to provide that additional commitment. You see some of these here don't even have that, but that's an additional commitment we've added here at Mill Creek in an effort to be intentional about those compatibility concerns. So again, this is just three examples. There's multiple iterations, but just to give you a little flavor of how that can look. The Hanover collection, these could be built on the R8 lots that we saw. Again, you've got nice square footage in these homes. You've got the commitment for all the same high-level building materials, because again, we don't want to lose quality. And you have multiple floor plans, multiple facades, and then of course all the color options, building skin options and trim packages. And that zoning, those 3 zoning conditions I talked about, those are those are across the entire community, north and south. So you have that commitment and directive that ensures the variability. These homes, again, you have to use your imagination a little bit. Photos are great, but you don't get to see these on a streetscape. So imagine, these aren't townhomes. They're not grouped in a building where you're just going to see this repeated. These are spread out at meanders around a street. As the street curves or as the street rises and falls with the topography, these homes being detached would rise and fall and move with it. And you get that variability based on all the different options and landscaping options. I didn't mention that one. So not everybody will have the same, 4 bushes and 1 tree. Everyone gets, we ensure we have a commitment that everyone gets a tree in their yards, but it doesn't have to be the same and exactly, dotted so that we create that visual interest. This is the Sterling collection. This can also go on those R8 lots. And again, you just see that this is an entirely different look. This can be mixed, so you could have Hanover and Sterling in the same street. So that again adds to that variability and just creating some additional options, trying again to meet that directive of your comprehensive plan to provide affordable, quality, attractive housing across the spectrum. So what we've tried to do here, and I'll just finish it up before summarizing, this is the Garnet collection. This is that age-targeted active adult that would go on the R10 lots. It's, as mentioned, all one-story living, exterior maintenance. It has the finishes that are commensurate with that type of buyer. Again, targeted, not restricted. So no one's going to look at your license or your birth certificate, but just trying to, again, provide the things that experience and market has told Lennar is attractive to certain home buyers. Because if you're looking at adding 565 homes to the housing supply of Mebane, it should meet that in a wide variety of ways. We don't want to, just speak to one subset of the home buying pool. We want to speak to somebody who's looking to move in and find that signature home that they've always been looking for, that's commensurate with something that they would find in Raleigh or Charlotte. And then we also want to meet a home buyer who's ready to step down and do a little less maintenance. We also want to provide a home for a home buyer who wants to live in a nice neighborhood with the pool and all the greenway options close to downtown where they want to be, nice square footage, but not as big of a yard. And perhaps different features highlighted about the lot. So not only do we want to provide that broad spectrum, but we also want to meet the mandate of your comprehensive plan that asks us to make good use of your infrastructure. You've got water here, you've got sewer here, you've got the road network. People want to be in this area. We talked about that. It's between downtown and Highway 119. It's along the North First Street corridor. So what your comprehensive plan is asking to do is, hey, put people where they already want to be. Put appropriate density in the places that capture folks in areas that they're already going to and already are convenient to their life and where we can already serve it. Make good use of our investment and our planning. So that's why we feel like, again, we wanted to be compatible and intentional with our zoning districts and with our home collection, but we also wanted to meet that directive of providing appropriate density and scale in places where it makes sense. Housing.
Did you said the classic collection was a raised foundation. Are the rest of them or any of them on?
The rest of them can be, but they're not required to be. So, based on topography conditions, you may see some raised foundations elsewhere, but the commitment is only there for the classic collection. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. It's everywhere where a home backs up to the golf course. So yeah, thank you. It was our next slide. So that condition is homes with any facade directly adjacent to the golf course are to either be constructed with a crawl space foundation or a raised foundation at least 12 inches above finished grade. So that's, again, trying to create and maintain a certain look from the golf course that is already present.
All classic and all back in the golf course, or just all back in the golf course?
Both are true. All backing the golf course and all classic. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't say that very well. You also
Can
see
you
here.
speak about the price points of the different collections at all, roughly?
I will, with
Okay.
the big, huge caveat that, of course, these are estimates.
Mhm.
It's obviously a function of all the costs, but the goal is to be, the classic collection homes that we are doing here are selling, in the 800s, in the triangle market. Certainly would expect, Mebane, we know, is being marketed similarly to the triangle right now. So, we'll say 750 on the high end, all the way down. We want to create multiple price points, but it does still stay expensive. So I would say down to the high threes or low fours for some of the other options.
I'll ask the obvious question. So there's a market for $700,000 homes?
Yes, that's actually what we're finding. And, we talk a lot about accessible, attainable housing. It's hard to say affordable housing these days, but accessible and attainable housing. But it's also important to remember that, if you have a buyer who wants to, have that level of home and wants to be in Mebane, you don't want them to be excluded either. That doesn't mean that you need to go out of your way to introduce it, but when you get a project like this, again, it's a puzzle piece. It's infill. We've got compatibility concerns we're trying to meet, so that provides a great opportunity where this is a place where those type level of homes does make sense, and we feel like we could meet that part of your market.
I have a few-
Again, all estimates and, yes, sir.
A few questions. You mentioned the requirement for you can't have two floor plans the same side by side or across the street or something like that. Is that true for the R8, R10, and R12, or is that just true for the
It's
classic?
the entire project. That's those last three conditions here. They're
Okay.
narrated here, and you see there's no caveat or qualifier about
Okay.
which pod or which collection. Let's see, some of the other conditions here are just about garage doors have to feature decorative paneling and or windows. Um, there's the building material condition that we talked about earlier. There's some construction, I guess, methodology about projecting eaves and front porch minimums, just trying to ensure and carry through what we felt like were some of the hallmark features of those photographs we just showed you. Trying to make sure that some architectural vernacular that makes sense, that memorializes not only the aesthetic, but the quality that we wanted to convey here is in a condition that can be held accountable to later.
Well, we're somewhat limited on our ability to require architectural commitments, but you are
Yeah.
offering these voluntarily,
You're
and
proffering
they're gonna be
these.
entered into the record as a condition of the approval.
Yes, sir. And thank you for highlighting that this is, above and beyond what, the statute specifically says that this can't be a part of zoning. But again, compatibility and harmony are part of your analysis. And we feel like in a case like this, where we are dropping into an existing neighborhood and to, a larger framework, that this would help you see some compatibility here.
Two more questions, if I may. That last bullet, that means that for corner lots, there would be two trees, is
Yes, sir.
basically what you're saying, okay?
Yes, sir.
And none of your pictures show brick veneer, but is brick veneer an option?
Let's see. Hardy plank, masonry, stone, shake, and/or board and batten. So siding materials shall be limited to wood, brick, stucco,
Okay.
stone. Yes,
So you do offer, Lennar offers a brick veneer option?
they do. And again, trying to
Yep.
have the quality control, but a wide universe of options.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, neighborhood outreach, Mr. Ewing, we're finally here. So we've alluded to several kind of results of that outreach, but just to summarize it here, we had our first community meeting back in August of 2024, mailed invites to 65 neighboring property owners. That's utilizing the city's notification radius of 300 feet because they're going to get notices from you, the city. So we like to make sure they also get a notice from us, introducing ourselves and establishing contact information and inviting them to come hear from us. And a lot of folks did. I should mention the HOA property manager also helped us advertise that meeting. She sent it out on the listserv. So we had a great attendance, over 65 people, I believe. So if I remember right on our sign-in sheet, so we had good dialogue and, overviewed the plan, took a lot of questions, held a second meeting on December 9th, one, to answer open questions from the first meeting, and two, to come back and share some of the evolutions of the plan, things you've heard about tonight, different bufferings, moving of greenways, adding mail kiosks, things like that. And also because when we met in August, our TIA had not yet been finalized. Caroline detailed the long process that goes through, and it was not complete yet in August. So in December, that was a big part of what we wanted to relay were the results of that you've heard tonight. That second meeting, we advertised the same way, mailing invites to our 65 neighboring property owners using an updated mailing list just in case anyone had moved or ownership had changed. We also held I guess we attended as guests a virtual HOA meeting on January 7th of just this year. That was noticed and advertised by the property management group. They were kind enough to just give us another mechanism and platform to try and reach anyone who hadn't yet had a chance to engage. And so we did that via Zoom, and just again gave an overview of the project, how it's changed, what the timing was, the public hearings, so forth. And the management company did invite everyone to that. So we've had a lot of good dialogue opportunities. We heard heard some more feedback at planning board last month. You've heard a lot of sort of just as we go mentions of how the plan has evolved subsequent to the feedback, but I'll just go through a few more. At our December 9th meeting, we had some neighbors from Stagecoach Corners. This is at the southeast corner adjacency of our project. So this is another new development. We've got homeowners in here now, and they had a question about, why don't we have one of these perimeter buffers that we talked about in some of the other places where I showed our buffer detail, and we were adding that, not required, but we were doing it anyway, perimeter buffer. And as you recall, the intentionality goal there was to ensure that we weren't having back-to-back lots anywhere. And so here, again, Stagecoach Corners is new. They came in under the same, kind of requirements that you guys are used to seeing and hearing about. So this is their approved layout here, and all of this area, this is Stagecoach Corners. This is the blue numbered lots are our proposed lots. This is Rolling Wheel Road that connects us. So you see here, the intervening area between us is their platted open space. So this is already required to be there per their own plat. This is a significant area here, wider than either of our lots that separates the back of their lots from the back of our lots. So that objective of not having back-to-back lots was already met by virtue of their own open space inclusion. Down here, where we started our first lot, they did have a buffer on their side. That's that little offset that you see before this lot. But we made sure to start our lot number one just we backed it up. So we're just barely clipping the back corner of that lot, meaning you won't have a house right where their house sits. So again, we offset that. We have one of those little intentional open space pockets here to ensure that we weren't creating too much back-to-back or side-to-side action. But that is why that perimeter buffer wasn't established here. It's because their plan has their open space pocket there. We talked about our perimeter buffer that we share on our adjoining property line with Tupelo Junction. This is just detailing that. That came out of discussions with neighbors from who live in these lots here to our east. So again, just another result of our communications. This is that 40-foot offset that traverses our entire shared property line, and south of Beeline here, it is in conjunction with the 30-foot planted buffer. An additional commitment that has happened since planning board, we talked about our neighbor here to the east. This is undeveloped and no plans. This is not an imminent development. However, it could come in someday. So you heard us talk about the fact that we've got a sewer outfall stubbed here. We have a road connection labeled. It's not a stub because again, this isn't an imminent project, but we did reserve a note on the plans that said, reserved for future right-of-way connection. So that way, the HOA or no one can be surprised or upset later that if and when a road were to be available for this property. But in the meantime, while this remains undeveloped, we did commit to a 6-foot tall opaque fence here to wrap this corner. Most of our shared property line with this neighbor is is offset by this corridor of our stream here and all this undisturbed open space. But here at the southeast corner, we do get a little close because that road, it has to connect from A to B, and we have to thread the stream. So our road is limited as to where it can go. So we did commit to a 6-foot opaque fence here to provide some separation and some really designation of that property line where it changes so that there wouldn't be any unwanted trespass or accidental exploration into our neighbor's property. So that's been an additional commitment that came out of that dialogue.
That neighbor is familiar with that additional commitment?
He-
That's not news to them?
He is, yes, sir. We've talked about that in detail. So with that, I will wrap it up and be happy to answer any questions, as is the team here. Remember, you've got our civil engineer, our traffic engineer, and the project managers and entitlement directors from Lennar. And we're here to answer any questions from you or our neighbors. Thank you for your attention. I know that was a lot of information, but we appreciate the opportunity to detail it with you.
What is the plan for construction traffic?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. That was also a discussion point, especially with our existing neighbors. So this, of course, is going to be a phased project. One, just due to the size of it, but also we are in the rules here from the Orange County Soil and Erosion Control District that say you can only disturb 20 acres at a time. So when I say phased, it's pretty small phases. So you have to stick to, there may be a little bit of wiggle room if you can meet the criteria, but for all intents and purposes, 20 acres at a time. So it'll be phased. Our engineers can speak, or Eric included, could speak to exactly what that is. But construction traffic on the north side will be limited to the Mrs. White's Drive entrance for now. If and hopefully, dependent on how quickly Tupelo Junction North comes on, if we can make this connection and utilize that, then we will. But we just can't control that timing through Tupelo Junction. So we don't want to commit to that in case it doesn't, in case the timing doesn't work out. But we will commit to not using that first street entrance. In addition, we've also committed to if there's any damage that occurs on the existing roads, asphalt deterioration, potholes, or grooves. If any trucks clip a corner and make a mud hole in somebody's corner yard, we'll repair all that. We're not going to leave the streets in a worse condition than we found them, or leave the existing homeowners having to deal with that. Of course, construction, other management practices, include wetting down the lots when they're dry and unbuilt upon and not stabilized yet, to ensure that dust is mitigated. That's a required standard anyway, but we talked about that with the neighbors, that will be met. And that's something that, we have to adhere to, and we will. And let's see, what else did we talk about in terms of construction? We did look at, there was a question of, can you not get to this Colonial Drive pod some other way? And again, the golf course here precluded us from being able to do that. So unfortunately, that existing stub leading into that pod is our only way in. So we will have to come through there to get to those lots, but we will do so very intentionally and carefully to ensure that we're not more than we have to disturbing or leaving a bad situation in those areas. Over here, I believe the plan is to start at 9th Street. Is that right?
Yeah, we start at 9th Street.
Start at 9th Street and then come down this way. Again, we've got some timing requirements over here related to the installation of the traffic improvements. So we're managing getting the traffic, getting to those improvement outlets, but also earthwork balancing. So we don't want to get in a situation where we're hauling dirt off just to have to bring more dirt on later. So the phasing is pretty meticulous, and it's been Eric's little brainchild to figure out how to do all that and not go above 20 acres. But that's been something that we've been able to establish. So if that didn't give you enough detail, I'll let Eric give you more. Thanks.
Franz, will we take a visual assessment of the streets, curbs, et cetera, prior to their starting, so we have sort of an idea to leaving the streets in the same condition? I mean, who monitors that?
Well, typically, we recommend they make a good record of the existing condition. Also, on a project like this, we do our own, but we don't go in and video and whatnot. We do suggest that to the developer that they keep that record.
Mud on the road, absolutely. That would fall into the category of after the fact conditions we will not leave you with. And I'll just say, oftentimes the best check and balance is a shared interest. And so I'll note that, of course, Lennar wants these lots to be attractive to home buyers. So we have a shared interest in keeping the roads nice, keeping the neighborhood nice, and ensuring that as homeowners look at this development, they see it as the nice development that we all see it as today. So it's easy to make that commitment because Lennar shares it and has the same goal.
For an individual home, what is their typical start to CO time?
I'll let Eric answer that.
You're speaking in terms of when it's starting to sell.
Mhm.
Introduce yourself, Eric.
I'm Eric Blocker, land entitlements manager with Lennar. It's really hard to say. I mean, assuming when we would get out of TRC with CDs and get approval tonight, I would expect it to be late 2026, early 2027.
So I guess my point is like, what, say you get, permit to start, right? And you've gotten approval, you get a permit to start building on lot 1 and you break ground. How long from breaking ground to completion does that typically take for you guys?
Per house. Typically it's 4 to 5 months.
Will you be using a local builder agent?
We have our own in-house agents.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a few, sorry. I know the northern part, the existing part of Mill Creek has had some challenges with their amenities, and I think they put out a vote for whether they should increase to better maintain, or I don't know all the details, but have you had any conversations with the northern part about their amenities and the additional burden? But of course, there'd be additional dues with these more houses.
That's right. We have, and that's again, thank you for asking. I didn't want to bring that up since it's an HOA, and I know you already have a lot on your plate. But yes, so we are, as I mentioned, the northern lots are a part of that existing HOA structure. And you remember, because this, the HOA and everything was originally planned to be almost 900 lots, they've been operating at a deficit for quite some time. So this is an additional 103 lots that will come in to that same dues structure, and also any assessment that the HOA ends up voting on and implementing these lots would be subject to that. Now, that said, if this project were to be approved and Lennar is a partner in this, certainly we've had conversations and would continue to have conversations with the HOA about how we can best manage the amenities upgrades that are going on right now. But we wanted to appropriately do that if and when Lennar becomes part of the neighborhood. But yes, that's conversations we've been having.
Second question was, are you considering any pickleball courts in the southern part with the age-appropriate houses? And between a golf course and pickleball, seems to me that would be an age-appropriate dream come true for some people.
Yes, we currently have 2 planned pickleball courts on the south side.
Okay. And then the last is just, I had that question earlier about irrigation with the age appropriate. I just wondered if you had any conversation about that during the break.
We did. Thank you for reminding me. So we have, or I say we, Lennar has learned over the years that installing and mandating irrigation is not the best path. A lot of folks don't want it, and it can be hard to manage if, for instance, there's a city mandated drought, water allocation program, that sort of thing. So instead, what they do is install drought-resistant plant types. And of course, there is that overarching commitment that they have to replace anything that doesn't survive. So if the lack of irrigation were to lead to a problem, then the HOA will cover that. But it's just been kind of a trial and error over the years with their exterior maintained neighborhoods that they've learned it's better to be thoughtful about what you install and then replace it versus having some mandated irrigation that isn't always well managed or wanted.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant or city?
One other thing I forgot to mention, just since it was asked earlier, we talked about educated estimates about house pricing and the idea of attainable and accessible housing. So I wanted to mention that, providing housing at certain price points is one way to do that, of course. But just the mere fact of introducing more housing supply to an area is another way to do that. So one factor, rising construction costs, rising land costs is one reason house prices are what they are. But the other reason is because there's not enough supply. I know you all know from your day jobs or anecdotally or your own experiences, there's just not enough out there to meet the demand, and that's also driving prices up. So by infusing the market with more homes, that's also in and of itself a way to help with that with those housing prices. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Well, it is public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against or have questions, just state your name and address and you can address the council.
Good evening, councilmen and women, staff. My name's Steve Beckner, and our family owns the land to the east of this proposed new development. Let me start by commending two very competent and very pleasant ladies who are here with us this evening, Amanda Hoodiern and Ashley Ownby. I've been working with both of them, and they've gone a long way toward addressing our concerns about Mill Creek Preserve. Let me just give you a little background. At the planning board meeting last month, one member referred to our property as a big vacant lot, but that doesn't do it justice. Our property is a beautiful mix of farmland, woods, streams, and trails. Our place features a renovated house built before the Civil War, a barn, a stable, and other structures. Since the 1970s, it's been a rural retreat for our family and friends, used for hiking and hunting. We also bale hay, and it's a natural habitat for all kinds of wildlife under forest management. We've had misgivings, I've got to tell you, misgivings about the southerly extension of the Mill Creek subdivision, even though we've known it was coming for 30 years. At one time, we had an option from Howard Cates to buy the acreage just to the south of our land, but we gave it up after being assured it could never be developed, since most of it was in the Mill Creek floodplain. So we were dismayed to learn that a road was going to be built near our southwest corner and cross the creek into Tupelo Junction. And we weren't happy to hear that more houses would be constructed along our western boundary. One of the proposed home lots, number 552, actually touches our property line. The proposed road runs very close to our southwest corner. We worry about potential trespassing and the liability issue that presents. Also, we have many tall trees along our property line. Houses built close to those trees would be vulnerable during windstorms through no fault of our own. Then, too, we had some concerns about potential connectivity to our land in the future. If I had my druthers, I'd prefer that the land on our perimeter remain undeveloped, but I'm realistic enough to know that's not in the cards. And as I said, after working with Amanda and Ashley, many of our concerns have been addressed. For instance, Lenora agreed to build a fence wrapping around our southwest corner, as Amanda mentioned. And I'm very appreciative of their efforts. Although I have to say I would like to see that fence extended further east past the Tupelo property line. going east along our southern property line. But on the whole, as I say, I'm very happy with, and these people, these lovely ladies have worked with us, and so I'm not opposed. I just wanted to let you know my views. Thank you for your attention.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Steve. Anyone else?
Good evening, Jonathan Warren, 1514 St. Andrews. I had previously ID'd some of my concerns to the council in writing, and I just want you all to know that I appreciate your responses. I want to set those aside for the moment and return this evening to an issue that was highlighted earlier, I believe, by Ms. Burkholder, and that regards the alignment of the greenway. As I see it on the site plan, it seems that it parallels two of the fairways before it actually crosses the golf course. So I guess I have two concerns or questions about that. The first is, my understanding is that currently the only persons allowed to be on the golf course are registered golfers. So if the greenway is going to cross over the golf course, has the golf course operator granted an exemption for that? That's the first question. The second issue is I play that course, and I'm a terrible, terrible golfer. I'm sure Lennard's going to find many of my balls in the woods there when they clear the trees to build homes. So I'm just questioning, does it make sense to locate a pedestrian pathway that close to the golf course? That's all for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I move we close public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is closed. I want to thank everyone for your attendance and patience, but man, and her group covered a great deal of material. So what's the council's pleasure?
I would like to just check in real quick about the last question from Mr. Warren regarding access with the fairway and the greenway.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman, for that opportunity, and Mr. Warren for the question. So yes, we did have to clear that with the golf course owner and operator, and they have agreed to that. So all of these plans that Lennar developed with McAdams, our engineer, have all been vetted and okayed and really, what should I say, massaged and modified through that discourse with the golf course operator. There are certain things they said no to. We've talked about a few of those, and there are things they said yes to. And so everything you see here has their blessing.
And
In terms of the alignment and, how that interacts with the golf course play. Again, we are following the adopted routes. Again, we've massaged those slightly with staff, pursuant to on the ground aspects, but these greenway or multi-use path corridors, have to traverse this area unless that entire part of the 2024 bike ped plan is going to be voided. So, we've done that to the best of our ability and working with staff to make those routes make as much sense as possible.
it looks like the multi-use pathway will be behind some trees. Is that correct on these fairways? Generally?
Um,
No?
let's see. I don't have my buffer detail map up, but
Near
yeah,
the crowd.
generally, yes, there's areas where it does go behind that vegetation.
Looks like on two locations, it crosses behind the tee, and one location on hole number 2 crosses behind the green, which there's a large area between number 2 and number 3 tee.
Mm-hmm.
But I think probably a good warning when people buy these homes is to have good insurance for poor golfers like me.
Certainly. Yes, that is one aspect of living on a golf course. Yes.
If I hit one bad, it's normally pretty bad. Any other discussion? for
I
any
just-
other questions for Amanda?
I wanted to make a quick comment. I really appreciate the community involvement that has gone through these multiple meetings with, and the HOA cooperating and you guys working with that HOA rep, to set up, it sounds like both in-person and Zoom meetings for multi-access points and, engaging in that dialogue. I I wish that we had this much community feedback and involvement every time before a project comes before us. And so I do appreciate that. And I appreciate the community members that are here and sitting through this meeting that's taking a little bit longer and listening to all of these questions. It's important.
Ms. Ownby, can we lift this up and however this moves forward, can we make sure that more developers can get out there earlier and talk with the residences? Because again, I second Katie's supports for
Our-
community involvement.
Yes, our ordinance requires neighborhood meetings with conditional zoning requests, and we
7 months before?
we do try at the TRC level to make sure that that's communicated quickly.
Thank you.
It's ultimately up to the developer as to when they do it.
Obviously. Thank you.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council on this development?
I'll make a motion to approve the R8, CD, R10, CD, and R12 CD zoning as presented. Motion to find that the application is consistent with the objectives and goals of the city's 2017 Comprehensive Land Development Plan, Mebane by Design. Specifically, the request is for a property within the city's G4 secondary growth area and is generally residential in nature, supports parks, greenway, open space expansion in developed and developing areas, prioritizing connectivity between each location, consistent with open space and natural resource protection goal 4.3, contributes to an emerging pedestrian and bicycle network as required by the city's bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Let me just say that highlighting the comments of others, I think they showed a high respect for the existing neighbors, especially on Laramie. Also high respect for just the existing Mill Creek community. I really like the idea of the age-targeted housing and trying to create some diversity in offerings, and also the emphasis on the multi-use path, I think really does overall serves the city well. The only thing that gives me pause is just 500 more houses in Mebane, and that's something that I think we all wrestle with. But overall, I think Lennar has tried to do a really good job, and I expect them, if this is approved, to continue to do an excellent job in working with our city.
Preston, do you have a comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I defer to the city attorney, but typically, well, tonight there were some voluntary conditions offered and there were some new ones since planning board plans in the PowerPoint, but typically, the city attorney will have the motion include with the voluntary conditions, but I defer to him on that.
That would be correct. Include all.
Remind me which ones you'd like me to add.
All offered voluntary conditions.
Can I just say it that
Reference
way?
9.
And all offered voluntary conditions added to that motion.
Second, good with that?
Second, yes.
Okay. All right. Can't get all took, Amanda. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Mayor Pro Tem votes aye, so the ayes have it. Thank you very much for your very detailed explanation, and thank all of you for your patience and participation. Moving on to our agenda, Downtown Exterior Improvements Grant Award. As I understand it, there are two issues here. One is to agree upon a variation in our application criteria, and the other is whether or not to approve the project. So, Ashley?
Yes.
If you want to just give them just a second
Okay.
to everybody get out, or okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'll briefly review the adopted program, which was adopted in November of 2021. We allocated $50,000 in the budget for the fiscal year we are currently in, and we are still accepting applications for this grant program. As a requirement for the application, you must have 2 quotes. That's the minimum amount. You may submit more. If there's a tenant, they must have documented property owner approval. Any off-site commitments require permission from the city, if it's encroaching into the street or sidewalk. And changes to an application after awarded must be pre-approved by staff. This grant is reimbursement based, so the work cannot be completed until after council has approved the request, and then it cannot be, funds cannot be awarded until those costs have been incurred by the applicant. The properties must be within the area identified in the downtown vision plan. It is a 50-50 match, and as I mentioned, is reimbursed following the project's completion and inspection by staff. And the maximum amount awarded is $10,000, and the program operates on a first come, first served basis. Currently, the eligible projects include facade improvements, historic preservation, art, and outdoor seating. We have received a request from the Mebane Business Association, which is the party responsible for certain electrical panels that are located primarily within right-of-way. And the proposal is to update and beautify the electrical panels. And I've shown here on the map the areas that were submitted with photographs with the application. From the 2 quotes that were submitted, the lowest quote is just over or just under $14,000. So the 50-50 match would be a request for $6,912.50. These are pictures taken last week of the electrical panels that are being requested for upgrade. The sun was creating some shadow on a few of them, but as you can see, a couple are attached to poles and others are boxes adjacent to poles. The picture provided on this slide is of the type of panel that would result from the upgrades, one example of that type of panel. And staff has reviewed the eligible projects. I briefly gave basically the heading of the categories. I didn't go into the details that are included. But we are proposing an amendment to the list of eligible projects as poles and utility boxes, things of that nature are not very well covered in the current list of projects. So we're requesting that exterior walls, poles, other exterior features that enhance the facade be called out within the eligible project list if you choose to approve this request.
Okay, we have 2 issues for us. One is to update the eligibility criteria. And if so, after that, then discuss approval of the particular grant. So it's open for discussion on it.
What exactly is going to be done to these electrical panels? How do you beautify them?
Well, this is the example. So going back to the others, as you can see, there are some that are wooden that are attached like this here. So the idea, and I think the business association's available for.
Really,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Okay.
it's backdated. If you look at some of them, the wires are hanging down the poles. There's like a green wire that comes from the bottom.
You wanna come up and identify yourself? So we
For
can
the
get you on.
viewers at home to hear you.
I am
Put you on
Claudia
record.
Clemente with the Mebane Business Association. I am the admin. We've tried to, a couple of them already. We have worked on 2, one in front of Martino's, one in front of Crafted. Mebane Electrical did the work for us. We updated, we put in a 50 amp. We have multiple 110 volts so that food trucks and vendors that we have out for any events, it's not only Dogwood or Mebane Business Association related. It's for all events that happen downtown. Everyone kind of uses it, even though we pay for it, but it is what it is. It's a downtown usage. We have 7 boxes completely. Only 2 of them have been updated. All the rest are really old, especially the one up down by Dollar General. I don't know if anybody's been
Do
there.
those even
That one's rough.
work?
They do work.
They do. Okay.
It's scary, but they work.
I know with setting up for Mebane on the Move, we
Yes.
are scared
Yes.
to touch those.
So they would all be upgraded completely, new boxes, new everything. We're adding 50 volts to a couple of them because we only have one box that has a 50 volts, which a couple of places need that, the food trucks especially. Instead of them running their high, really loud generators, we have them plug in instead, and it makes it so much better, especially for festivals. Nobody wants to hear all that noise.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
NBA's given so much, and I would be very supportive of adding this downtown. They've done a lot, and like they said, there's reasons that this stuff needs to be improved. And I think Ms. Burkholder is made an exceptional example of scary outlets downtown. So I would have no problem supporting this.
So we need a motion to approve the,
I motion to modify the eligible criteria of the downtown exterior improvement grants as presented.
I'll second that.
have a motion and a second to modify the eligibility requirements. Any further discussion on that?
Just
Mary?
that I'm excited to see an expansion of our criteria. And just to say that this is something that our local business owners can't necessarily take on themselves, right? I mean, this is common area space of our downtown. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I don't really think it modifies the intent as much as moving it outside a little bit. I mean, we've allowed replacement of windows. That's not really always beautification. Sometimes it's practicality, structural redoing the concrete and the brick. So, but it is sort of moving things outside a little bit. But, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. So we need a motion on whether or not to approve the grant.
I motion to award $6,912.50 in downtown exterior improvement grants to the applicant for the project described in the application.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second to approve the grant. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Ewing's going to say this, and I'm going to echo
Know
this.
it.
We want to see these funds used.
Yep.
We have this fund set aside. We want to see these applications. I don't want to have a balance carrying over. So I'm excited to see this project, and I would love to see more.
Ditto, Ms. Hunby, how many more months are left in this particular year of grants? Is it calendar year or fiscal year?
Budget year.
Budget year, so June, it'll run out. So we got 4 months downtown, folks. Let's use it.
First one. Yep. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, Mr. Brown, purchase a vacant lot, James Miller property located on Smith Drive.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem, the blue property shown as lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 of an old Southview subdivision that is recorded plat. As you can see from the aerial, those streets have not been ever built. The city property is shown in yellow. It is to the west of the the wharf and of the Public Works. We're purchasing this, if approved, for tax value. It will allow the city to close the street that is platted but never built, in addition to the squaring off, if you will, of the property that the city already owns. We've staff-wise, and I think endorsed by this council on the purchase of the other properties there, we felt it was beneficial to have additional property, if for nothing else other than a buffer from the wharf and the Public Works. But with the city growing, it's reasonably anticipated that property would be used in the future at some point. Staff recommends the purchase of this property as outlined in the agenda package.
Any questions? Awesome. What's your pleasure?
I move that the city purchase the property from James Miller Jr. for the purchase price of $13,749, subject to the usual due diligence, and authorize the city manager and finance director to execute the purchase agreement and the necessary documents to consummate the purchase.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to purchase. Any further discussion? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, staff, for finding land. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience that you need to plan ahead. Okay, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointments, Ms. Holding.
Yes, we have 2 openings related to annual appointment to our BPAC, terms ended January 31st. Those 2 openings are for an Orange County representative and also a city position. Last week, we also received notice that one of our members is moving outside of Mebane and therefore is resigning from the BPAC. So staff is making the request, since we do have 4 applicants for 2 seats, that you might also consider filling this recently vacated seat. We did just complete 8 weeks of advertising for open BPAC positions. We, of course, can do it again if that is your wish, but I imagine we would receive a similar applicant pool. The applicants include James Allen, who's our current BPAC vice chair and fills the Orange County position. We do, at a staff level, recommend current members of our BPAC who are seeking reappointment, and we do recommend that Mr. Allen be reappointed if that's the pleasure of the council. And then we received 3 additional applications from residents of our city limits, one of which Mr. Johnson lives in the Orange County part of Mebane as well.
So just to make sure I'm following here, so may we motion then for 3 individuals?
Yes, with the condition that the 3rd individual would serve the current term, so it would end 2026. So there does need to be some distinction of which city seat is for the 2028 term and which is for the 2026 term.
Okay.
And you're recommending Mr. Allen continue?
Mr. Allen, yes, he is also in the Orange County part of Mebane, so.
So we would need a motion to reappoint Mr. Allen, appoint 2 others, and designate which one of those would be serve the existing term, which one would be fresh term.
Yes, that's correct.
So I would motion to appoint James Allen and appoint Richard Helms, because I believe he's on the south side, kind of south of the interstate. And then I would also motion for, I believe, Josh Johnson, who's the one that's on Gray Flint Trace, so that's the Orange County side, to complete the existing term, to serve on the City of Mebane Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission and provide guidance to the Mebane City Council on implementation of bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan and related matters.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to reappoint Mr. Helms, appoint Mr. Johnson for a full term, and, no, Mr. Helms for full term, Mr. Johnson for the existing term.
Yes.
Great. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Mr. Brown, Alamance County Library Committee appointment recommendation?
Typically, the city appoints members of the Alamance County Library Committee. Obviously, we provide a facility for that organization. So we had applicants as shown in your package, and it's up to you in your discretion to appoint or recommend for appointment to the county commissioners who you think is appropriate.
I move we appoint Deborah Kaufman to the Alamance County Library Committee, representative for Mebane.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to appoint Deborah Kaufman to the Library Committee. Any discussion, questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries for Deborah Kaufman. Any additional business come for the council? John, Richard, Preston, anything?
Just the announcement.
City manager meet and greet. Thought they're finally gonna get to meet you?
Finally, yes.
Yes, sir. I don't blame you putting it off. That's gonna be Tuesday, February 18th, 5 to 6, at the MAC. Also, city council budget workshop, don't forget Thursday, February 27th, and, Mebane 2045 public forum number 2 on Thursday, February 27th, 6 to 8. Any additional information, business come for the council?
We have Citizens Academy on the 13th, so this Thursday at 6:30. This session, we're going to be at the Historic Society, so the old rec.
This is a continuation of the one started last fall?
Yes.
Great job. Anything else? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for your patience with me.
Thank you, Tim.